Chapter 1816. Dong dong dong. Lu Bai took 3 steps back. These 3 steps were too heavy, and terrifying cracks spread under his feet. A faint trace of blood appeared at the corner of his mouth. Just as Prison had said, Lu Bai had just awakened not long ago, and his strength had not fully recovered. Even if he was once known as the strongest in the immemorial era, he was still far behind Prison in his prime. Even though they were both from different eras, their cultivations were still at the same level. Lu Bai was still no match for the other party, even though they were both from the same era. The strongest in the immemorial era has never been defeated. You are just a joke. Get out of my way. Boom. Prison was too terrifying. He had lived since the ancient times until now, and was known as one of the strongest in the eternal universe. At this moment, his majesty was on full display, and no one could rival him. Bang bang bang. Prison moved forward in terror. His target was only Yi Xian, and he did not put Lu Bai in his eyes at all. If Lu Bai was in his prime, he would have turned around and left without saying a word. Unfortunately, Lu Bai had just awakened, and his strength was still recovering. He was no match for Prison. At this moment, Prison's thoughts were very simple. He only wanted to seal Yi Xian here forever. If he missed this opportunity, he did not know when the next one would come. It's not your turn to kill him. Boom. Lu Bai stood out again. Immemorial Dao runes were growing on his body, and terrifying immemorial divine light was blooming. An ancient and mysterious power was awakening. Immemorial divine tribulation. Lu Bai's white fingers formed a heavenly seal, and he was chanting scriptures in a low voice. The universe was rumbling, and the mysterious scriptures could make one's soul explode. Terrifying light of calamity was growing between his fingers. Divine tribulation? Buzz. Prison's expression changed slightly. He naturally knew the terrifying means of the strongest in the immemorial era. But he calmed down in the next moment. He was not a cat or dog, and he was not afraid of the immemorial divine tribulation. 9 Heavens Prison Suppression Seal. Boom. Rays of black light shot up into the sky, forming a terrifying cage. This was an ancient great divine ability, and it was not inferior to the immemorial divine tribulation. Tribulation. Suppress. The 2 world-shaking characters roared in a low voice as they unleashed their greatest divine abilities. The dazzling light was about to shatter the eternal universe, causing the entire ancient danger zone to crumble. Boom. 1 strike. This attack was extremely blinding. The heaven and earth essence chi exploded and dissipated. The entire ancient celestial palace was reduced to ashes. The ancient celestial mountain, which had existed since ancient times, collapsed horribly. The undulating mountain range rumbled and collapsed. Boom! With a loud bang, Lu Bai was sent flying. He spat out a mouthful of blood and landed heavily at Yi Xian's feet. Absolute beginning. You are no match for me now, and I don't want to have a big karma with you. Just leave. Bang bang bang. Prison was already somewhat deranged. He was slowly walking towards Yi Xian. The ancient divine mountain beneath his feet was trembling. His strength was truly incomprehensible. At this moment, Yi Xian's face was as gloomy as water. He stared fiercely at Prison, who was walking towards him. Then, he frowned and looked at Lu Bai, who was lying on the ground. No one knew what he was thinking. Perhaps some people would ask why Yi Xian didn't sit on the Dark Emperor's throne when the 2 were fighting. The reason was simple. Prison's aura had been locked onto him. Just his aura alone was enough to immobilize him. How could he sit on the Emperor's throne? Moreover, so what if he sat on the Dark Emperor's throne? In the face of such a world-shaking existence, Yi Xian was no match for him. I will open a path for you. You go. Lu Bai said weakly. Suddenly Lu Bai weakly spoke. However, his voice was extremely cold, causing Yi Xian's brows to furrow even more. Who are you? At this moment, Yi Xian ignored the pressure from Prison. He frowned and looked at Lu Bai. This was because Lu Bai gave him an extremely strange feeling. He wasn't the person he was familiar with. I am the person who wants to kill you, Lu Bai replied coldly. Where is Lu Bai? Yi Xian muttered coldly. His fists were slightly clenched. A trace of loneliness flashed across his eyes. He has disappeared. He will never appear again. Now, I will release the aura he is suppressing on your body. You should leave quickly. Boom. Lu Bai formed a seal with both hands and struck Yi Xian's body. Finally, Yi Xian regained control of his body. He even opened up a dark passage. This was obviously the escape route. Leave quickly. Lu Bai shouted coldly. He urged Yi Xian to leave quickly. He stood in front of Yi Xian. Obviously, prison was giving him a lot of pressure. You want to leave? Prison shouted fiercely. He raised his 5 fingers and wouldn't allow Yi Xian to leave just like that. However, in the next moment his movement stopped. This was because Yi Xian didn't escape. Instead, he walked around Lu Bai and walked towards him. What are you doing? Lu Bai shouted angrily. Unfortunately, Yi Xian didn't respond at all. This was because Lu Bai wasn't the person he knew. He didn't need Lu Bai to save him. The two of them were enemies and not friends. You really have a backbone. Prison nodded slightly. Although he looked at Yi Xian with surprise, he felt more at ease. However, in the next moment, Yi Xian's words caused his breathing to become chaotic. A surge of anger grew in his heart. You dog. Do you really think I'm easy to bully? Boom boom boom. An ancient ferocious aura filled the sky. Yi Xian's forehead flashed crazily. The heaven-destroying halberd rippled out and transformed into a 3-meter-long halberd that fell into his hand. You dare to humiliate me? Prison was suppressing his anger. His voice was terrifyingly cold. Humiliate you? Yi Xian laughed. In the next moment, his expression became ferocious. He shouted, Lao Tzu wants your life. Kill. Yi Xian fully unleashed his battle strength. He and the halberd became one. He transformed into a shocking killing light that swept towards prison. This attack could be said to be Yi Xian's strongest attack. It even combined all of his spells and daos. A firefly dares to compete with the bright moon? Against Yi Xian's attack, prison was extremely disdainful. He casually slapped towards Yi Xian. Yi Xian and the heaven-destroying halberd were sent flying. Too weak. He was too weak. In the face of such a terrifying attack, Yi Xian's cultivation was too weak. He didn't have the qualifications to fight with his opponent. 3 long rivers go. All of a sudden, before prison could react, Yi Xian's flying figure stopped. The heaven-destroying halberd spun around him in a terrifying manner. The terrifying sound of waves could be heard in the universe. Whoosh whoosh, the river of chaos rolled over. The river of destiny was illusory and unpredictable. The river of time froze the universe. When the 3 long rivers appeared in the universe, prison's aura froze. Interesting. Is this your last resort? Looking at the 3 long rivers above Yi Xian's head, prison didn't move at all. It was as if he didn't care about the 3 long rivers. Chapter 1817. To put it bluntly, Yi Xian wouldn't be a match for him, even if Yi Xian used the 3 winding rivers to fight him, let alone the fact that Yi Xian summoned the 3 winding rivers. He was one of the most powerful existences in all of eternity. In his era, the 3 long rivers didn't exist. The 3 laws derived from the eternal universe were nothing to him. Kill. In the next moment, Yi Xian attacked violently. The 3 winding rivers stirred up monstrous waves. The 3 terrifying winding rivers supported Yi Xian, causing his combat strength to skyrocket. Whoosh whoosh, the 3 winding rivers surged for eternity. Yi Xian wielded the sky-punishing halberd and charged towards prison. Not only did the halberd contain his cultivation, it was also supported by the power of the 3 winding rivers. The heavens and earth were in chaos. The halberd light suppressed the world. The sky-punishing halberd turned into millions of cold light beams and charged towards prison. With the 3 winding rivers supporting the halberd, it could be described as extremely ferocious. Clang clang clang. The heavens and earth rumbled. Even though Yi Xian's killing intent was terrifying, prison was even scarier. In the face of Yi Xian's endless attacks, prison blocked them easily with his palm and fingers and sent the sky-punishing halberd flying back. I thought you were capable. Seems like the 3 winding rivers are only SOSO. Clang. Prison slapped out and Yi Xian was sent flying again. The sky-punishing halberd was too unbeatable. It wasn't something that Yi Xian could touch. Bang! Yi Xian fiercely smashed into the ground, and the heavenly execution halberd fell out of his hands. This was still prison showing mercy. Otherwise, Yi Xian would have been killed in a single strike. I'll seal you for eternity. Only then can I truly be at ease. Rumble. Seal the sky punishing halberd and suppress eternity. Prison raised his palm and formed an extremely terrifying suppressive force. His eyes flickered with excitement because he wasn't suppressing an ordinary person. He was suppressing a man that even he was afraid of. You want to suppress me? You're celebrating too early. Roar. Yi Xian's roar shattered mountains and rivers, causing space to collapse. He stood up with a bang, and a fierce roar of rage came from his mouth. At this critical moment, he absolutely couldn't sit still and wait for death. Heaven's Gate is one eternal river. Yi Xian formed a mudra with both of his hands, unleashing one terrifying technique after another. The terrifying sound of waves came from above his head, as the three long rivers surged violently. Whoosh! The three long rivers had existed since the beginning of time. The waves were surging. These were not ordinary waves, but the power of the rules transformed from the three great rules. They had the supreme power to shake the eternal universe. Eternal river. Prison felt suffocated as he muttered in surprise. His eyes flickered intensely while a wisp of fear flashed through his eyes. Although he didn't care about the three winding rivers, the Aeon Winding River was different. The Aeon Winding River had a heaven-shaking, earth-shattering power. Even he had to face it head-on. Stop. You can't summon the ancient river with your current cultivation. Lu Bai growled coldly. What a pity. Yi Xian had no intention of stopping. At this moment, his only trump card was the Aeon Winding River. Otherwise, how could he fight against prison? Whoosh! The three long rivers overlapped with each other, and an extremely terrifying fluctuation was generated between heaven and earth. When the three long rivers converged, the sound of waves that shook the heavens and the earth reverberated through the universe. Puff! A mouthful of blood sprayed out from Yi Xian's mouth as his body began to crack. Even though he had merged with the heavenly gate, forcefully merging the three great rivers into one and transforming them into the legendary Eternal River, had caused him to suffer an enormous amount of suffering. However, since Yi Xian had chosen to combine the three long rivers, he was prepared to pay any price. Eternal Universe origin returns to one form. Puff! Yi Xian's body exploded horribly. There was almost no place on his body that wasn't damaged. However, he was still roaring ferociously as he rapidly formed a mudra. Rumble! In the next moment, an earth-shattering event occurred. The three long rivers finally merged together, and a simple and turbid river appeared above his head. The sparkling and translucent waves flickered with a mysterious radiance, and just the power that was released caused the entire ancient forbidden land to rumble and tremble. The Aeon Winding River pierced through the universe. An ancient wave rolled down, and the terrifying power poured into Yi Xian. Yi Xian's aura was rising steadily, and his aura was connected with the Aeon Winding River. I'll take your dog life. Boom. In the next moment, Yi Xian roared ferociously. He punched out, and the Aeon Winding River moved with him. The terrifying ancient wave swept towards prison. I've dominated the ancient times, and I'm immortal. So what if you summon the Aeon Winding River? Bang! Prison punched out, and the ancient and unparalleled power erupted. The suppressive power that penetrated the ancient and modern times blasted out violently. Boom! One strike. The two of them had only exchanged a single blow, but the ancient river was shaking violently. The waves were terrifying as they retreated. Yi Xian and Hell were sent flying with a loud bang. External power is just external power. If you awaken your true self, I might be a little afraid of you. Do you really think you're a match for me by borrowing external power? Rumble! Prison roared in disdain. His flying figure came to a stop, and the world seemed to freeze at this moment. Then, he turned into a ray of light and blasted towards Yi Xian. So what if you're using external power? You dare to bully me? I'll fight you. Rumble! With the support of the Aeon Winding River, Yi Xian also risked his life. He didn't care about the backlash of the Aeon Winding River, and didn't care if he could withstand the power of the Aeon Winding River. He also charged towards prison in a frenzy. Bang bang bang. The Aeon Winding River churned, and the world's fist light bloomed. Yi Xian blasted towards prison in a frenzy, and prison gradually became serious. He had been holding back, but now he was serious. Sky suppression decimating Earth. Wang. Prison punched out, sending Yi Xian flying again. In the next moment, he pointed a finger at the sky and stomped on the ground. Rays of black light spiraled up from his body, and a terrifying power that could suppress both ancient and modern was released. Suppress! Rumble! Prison pointed a finger, and the power that could suppress both ancient and modern was blasted towards the Aeon Winding River. He wanted to suppress the so-called Aeon Winding River with his own strength. This was the terror of sky suppression decimating Earth. They ignored all existences, and could be said to be invincible throughout the ages. Even the will of the primal chaos universe couldn't do anything to them, let alone fear the so-called Aeon Winding River. Whoosh whoosh, the sky suppression decimating Earth attack immediately reversed the flow of the Aeon Winding River. Huge waves rumbled, and then began to turn illusory. Under Prison's attack, the Aeon Winding River actually showed signs of collapsing. Immemorial floating life calamity. Rumble. Suddenly, the white-robed figure streaked across the sky. Immemorial Tao runes bloomed in the world, and a huge palm that blotted out the sky condensed and slammed down on Prison. Chapter 1818. You dare? You was enraged. Even though Lu Bai's strength hadn't fully recovered, you didn't dare to be careless. After all, Lu Bai's title as #1 in the immemorial era wasn't just for show. Boom! Yu's attack broke through the sky and neutralized Lu Bai's attack. However, Yi Xian continued to channel the power of the ancient Long River to attack you without any fear of death. Kill! Lu Bai attacked again. The two of them attacked you in a frenzy. The entire ancient forbidden ground exploded. The power of the three was too terrifying. You've made me angry. Facing the combined attacks of the two of them, Prison's fury finally erupted. His punch caused the ancient river to tremble violently, and then it transformed into an illusory wave that completely dissipated in the sky. Yu's power was terrifying. Qi. Without the support of the ancient river, Yi Xian was sent flying like a kite with its string cut. In the next moment, Lu Bai used the primordial god technique to fight with hell once again. Absolute beginning. Are you forcing me to kill you? You made a terrifying move. He was no longer using some kind of grand technique, but rather the laws of heaven and earth. Every strike he made contained an earth-shattering power, which directly pushed Lu Bai into a disadvantageous position. However, Lu Bai was known as the #1 in the immemorial era. Even though his strength hadn't fully recovered, it wasn't so easy for you to defeat him. Rumble. While the two were fighting fiercely, Yi Xian was lying on the ground covered in blood. He couldn't stand up because his injuries were too severe. Yi Xian, how are you? Qi. The human Tao master was also severely injured. However, she was in a much better state than Yi Xian. She quickly came to Yi Xian's side and asked anxiously, "Help me sit on this emperor's throne." Large amounts of blood flowed from Yi Xian's mouth. However, he stared at the dark emperor's throne. He grabbed the human Tao master's sleeve and muttered, "Okay." The human Tao master did not know what Yi Xian wanted to do, but she did not need to know because she believed that Yi Xian had his reasons. In the next moment, the human Tao master hurriedly helped Yi Xian's limp body up and shot towards the Dark Emperor's throne. Stop him! Although Prison and Lu Bai were locked in a fierce battle, he had been paying attention to Yi Xian's movements. When he saw the human Tao master helping Yi Xian head for the Dark Throne, Prison's aura changed drastically. He blasted out a beam of divine light to stop Yi Xian, but Lu Bai intercepted it. "Yi Xian, you won't succeed." Boom. Although Lu Bai had temporarily stopped you, the undying Heaven Lord had already appeared halfway. His entire body was bathed in blood, and he was laughing maniacally. His forbidden death ray ruthlessly shot towards Yi Xian. "How dare you!" The human Tao master waved her hand, completely nullifying the undying Heaven Lord's forbidden art. However, this also prevented her from sending Yi Xian to the Dark Emperor's throne. "Stop him or all of you will die." Suddenly, Prison let out a crazed roar. The hearts of the forbidden gods hiding in the shadows trembled. They knew that Prison was speaking to them. In the next moment, the taboo clenched their teeth. They didn't dare to resist the will of Prison, because the other party definitely wouldn't let them off if they went against the will of the heavens. They could only charge towards Yi Xian. Yi Xian, I'll block them for you. The rest is up to you. Boom! The human Tao master let out a mournful roar. The great Tao of karma appeared. Together with the forbidden death ray, she was extremely terrifying. She stood in front of the forbidden gods, clearly trying to buy some time for Yi Xian. Kill her! The undying heaven lord let out a savage roar and charged towards the human Tao master. The other forbidden gods were not willing to fall behind. All sorts of terrifying forbidden arts blasted towards the human Tao master. Bang! 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 The human Tao master fought against all of them alone. How could she be a match for these forbidden gods? Her body was badly mangled by their attacks, but she stubbornly blocked their path and bought Yi Xian some time. Crawl! Yi Xian was crawling. He was crawling towards the Dark Emperor's throne with great difficulty. The ground beneath him was stained with blood. It was a ghastly sight to behold. Yi Xian did not have the time to watch the human Tao master's miserable state. His last chance was on the Dark Emperor's throne. Only by sitting on it would he be able to break out of this perilous situation. 1 foot, 2 feet, 3 feet, 4 feet. Yi Xian was crawling with great difficulty. He was only 1 foot away from the Dark Emperor's throne. No! You roared madly. He unleashed a terrifying attack that bathed Lu Bai in blood. Then he charged towards Yi Xian. But at that moment, Yi Xian had already crawled to the Dark Emperor's throne. He pressed his hands against the armrests of the throne. With the strength of his arms, he finally slumped into the Dark Emperor's throne. Boom! In the next moment, Yi was already in front of Yi Xian. His unprecedented power came crashing down on Yi Xian. However, what happened in the next moment caused Prison to retreat repeatedly, because something that he absolutely didn't want to see had still happened. Boom! Eternal desolation, eternal emptiness. A gloomy light flickered on the Emperor's throne. The aura of eternal desolation emanated from the Emperor's throne. Yi Xian, who had been lying limp on the Emperor's throne, slowly straightened. Thump! 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 It was as if a war drum was beating in one's mind. It was as if the eye of desolation was opening. An indescribable rhythm came from the ancient impasse. It directly affected everyone's heart, causing them to feel an inexplicable sense of terror. Buzz! A gray fog surrounded the Dark Emperor's throne. The ancient desolation aura became even more intense. The sound of eternal footsteps seemed to pass through the eternal universe, from the distant past to the present. It kept ringing in everyone's ears. No, no. You retreated in fear. His body and mind were trembling. He stared at Yi Xian, who was sitting on the Dark Emperor's throne. His aura was extremely chaotic. Eternal desolation, eternal samsara. That desolation aura passed through the ancient impasse. That lonely figure came from the eternal universe. Eternal desolation, eternal desolation, eternal desolation, eternal invincibility. All would seem as insignificant as dust in front of that desolation. Who dares to claim to be invincible? Who dares to claim to be invincible? Rumble! In the eternal void, heaven and earth froze. Yi Xian slowly opened his eyes in the desolate fog. A voice of eternal desolation came from the all-heavens universe. Sweeping through the ancient impasse, eternal desolation. When this voice sounded, many taboo figures spat out blood. They felt as if their spirits were about to explode. They wailed in pain and collapsed to the ground. It's him, he's back. Lu Bai looked at Yi Xian in a daze. His emotionless eyes finally showed great fluctuations at this moment. Even his body and mind were slightly trembling. He looked at Yi Xian, who was sitting on the Dark Emperor's throne, with an extremely complicated expression. Chapter 18-19. Huang! Roar! The heavens collapsed and the earth cracked. You trembled and roared. The thing he didn't want to see the most still happened. Kacha! The Emperor's throne that Yi Xian sat on crumbled, turning into a cloud of dust and dissipating. Only the ancient desolate aura circled around his body, making one's heart tremble at first glance. Dong dong dong. Yi Xian slowly walked forward. With every step he took, the eternal universe seemed to tremble along with his footsteps. At this moment, the world's vital energy froze and the laws of all things dissipated. Only his ancient desolate footsteps continuously sounded. The great Tao walked alone, accompanied by desolation. At this moment, Yi Xian was too mysterious. It was as if he'd become a different person. When his eyes opened and closed, the entire ancient danger ground was distorted and shattered. Terrifying cracks appeared in the ancient danger ground, as if it was about to break apart the world. Yu was retreating. He was unconsciously retreating. He was retreating in horror. This was because Yi Xian was currently walking towards him. With every step Yi Xian took, he would take a step back, forming an extremely strange scene. It was as if this scene had appeared before, just that it was buried in the distant and unknown past, unknown to all. Huang, I am not afraid of you. Roar. Suppressing the past and present, roaring angrily for eternity. You finally stopped retreating, because he already had nowhere to retreat. He roared loudly at Yi Xian. That terrifying black radiance continuously rose around him, erupting with a heaven-shocking and earth-shattering power. Ancient desolation, ancient sorrow, ancient great dream of 1,000 years. At this moment, Yi Xian's aura was lonely and sorrowful. His eyes revealed a feeling of the vicissitudes of time. He didn't look at you at all, as if he was just muttering to himself. At this moment, he might not be Yi Xian, but the legendary Desolate. His entire being gave off a hazy feeling, as if he was looking at flowers in a fog. Eternal primal chaos was severed, heaven, earth black and yellow broken. The three great ages no longer exist. This world will finally have a true conclusion. Huang muttered softly. Huang, I'm not afraid of you. I'm not afraid of you. Yu was roaring madly, but he didn't make a move. The man standing before him was a nightmare that he could never wake up from. He didn't even have the courage to make a move. In the distant and unknown past, in the primordial legends, that solitary figure had walked through three great eras, and left behind many terrifying legends that were unknown to the people. Some of these legends were heard by you, while some were witnessed by him personally. No one knew better than him just how powerful this man was, shocking the heavens and earth, invincible throughout the ages. In front of the strongest person in the primordial era, he was nothing but a joke. He had once cut off an era all by himself. He had once pushed open that door all by himself. If there was someone who dared to call himself invincible throughout the ages, only Huang alone would dare. Sweeping through the ages, suppressing past and present, this legendary man had appeared once again. In front of him, who dared to make a move against him? A mere ancient creature, how dare you block my path? While Yu was in extreme fear, Huang's ancient gaze finally landed on him. This also made Yu roar in fear. Huang, I'm going to kill you, perhaps to overcome the fear in his heart. Or perhaps you really wanted to kill Huang. He was roaring hysterically. His heaven-shocking and earth-shattering might was released to the extreme. Rumble. Prison finally overcame the fear in his heart. His hands quickly formed a series of seals, and the terrifying power of absolute destruction began to brew. A terrifying black light rose from his entire body, and it actually gradually transformed into a black and dazzling prison. Suppress. Rumble. Shocking the heavens and earth, invincible throughout the ages. At this moment, Yu erupted with unprecedented power. His entire body turned into an ancient prison, crashing down on Huang. How can the light of a firefly compete with the brilliance of the bright moon? Huang spoke in a low voice, as if ignoring the terrifying power of his opponent. Only the ancient and desolate aura was revolving around his body. Desolate heaven finger. A finger that was like the ancient sky, like the universe, was lifted up by Huang. Huang. A terrifying thing happened. Heaven and earth, time and space, the ancient void. A gray divine finger appeared between heaven and earth, as terrifying as an ancient heavenly pillar. Go. Huang pressed down with his finger. This terrifying finger covered the heavens and earth. The ancient and desolate aura flowed out, crashing down on you. Rumble. A finger of Huang's, all living things died. The ancient and desolate land exploded. The heaven and earth origin energy dissipated. All laws were turned into nothingness under this finger of Huang's. Kacha. A terrifying explosion sounded. This finger shattered the ancient prison that you had turned into. His entire body was exposed. A bloody mist exploded on his body, and he was blasted hundreds of millions of li away. Arg! You screamed in horror. The black light on his body exploded. One could faintly see his flesh exploding, proving how terrifying this desolate heaven finger was. What invincible throughout the ages? What shocking and desolate land? In front of this finger, they were too insignificant. Even the shocking and desolate land couldn't withstand it. Huang! You screamed crazily. His angry roar echoed through the entire ancient and desolate land. However, he slashed through the ancient void and turned into a beam of light, disappearing in an instant. Escape! You actually escaped. Facing this legendary man, he could only choose to temporarily avoid him. It was because he didn't have the confidence to defeat this invincible legend. As you left, the entire ancient and desolate land exploded because of Huang's finger. Terrifying cracks appeared, and the entire ancient and desolate land trembled. It was obvious that it was going to collapse completely. The desolate heaven finger reappeared in the world. How terrifying was this finger? Even the shocking and desolate land had to retreat. The ancient and desolate land was going to collapse under this finger. Rumble! The ancient and desolate land shattered like jade. The terrifying cracks continued to expand, and the entire ancient and desolate land was going to explode. Arg! All of a sudden, a painful scream came from Yi Xian's mouth. He suddenly knelt on the ground. The ancient and desolate aura dissipated from his body. It was as if the legendary man was slowly retreating. Yi Xian! The human Dao sovereign worriedly called out. Go! Suddenly, Lu Bai appeared in front of Yi Xian. He grabbed Yi Xian and instantly cut open a passage. He took Yi Xian and disappeared instantly. At the same time, the taboo figures hurriedly used their taboo escape techniques and escaped from the ancient and desolate land that was about to explode. The human Dao sovereign had no time to chase after Yi Xian and Lu Bai. He could only open up an escape route and hurriedly escape from the ancient and desolate land. Rumble! In the next moment, the ancient and desolate land that had existed since ancient times exploded. The last piece of pure land left from ancient times also disappeared completely. Chapter 1820. Pain. Extreme pain. Yi Xian felt as if his head was about to explode. Strange yet familiar memories kept appearing in his mind. These memories were too real. So real that Yi Xian felt as if he had experienced them himself. In these memories, Yi Xian felt as if he had become another person, a powerful person that he yearned to be. A wave of his hand could destroy the heavens and trample the ages. A roar could follow the ancient galaxy. A finger could rule the universe. Who am I? I am Yi Xian. I am Huang. No, I am Yi Xian. In these familiar yet strange memories, Yi Xian was struggling in pain. He kept resisting these strange yet familiar memories, because he was only himself and not anyone else. I am Yi Xian. I am not Huang. Yi Xian was screaming in pain, but his mind was constantly in chaos. Sometimes he thought he was Yi Xian, and sometimes he thought he was the legendary #1 person of the desolate era. Yi Xian was screaming in pain. This kind of mental disorder was not something that outsiders could feel. This kind of pain was enough to make one collapse. Yi Xian remembered many things that had happened in the 3 great eras. Although there were only fragments, they were real in his mind. The outside world. Lu Bai frowned slightly as he looked at Yi Xian struggling and screaming in his unconscious state. Killing intent flashed across his eyes. Wang! A wisp of immemorial divine light gathered in his palm, and a faint killing intent bloomed. It was as if Lu Bai was going to kill Yi Xian on the spot in the next moment. However, Lu Bai still hesitated. The wisp of immemorial divine light did not fall until a sigh came from his mouth. He finally gave up this excellent opportunity. Wang! Suddenly, Yi Xian opened his eyes. A wisp of desolation flashed across his eyes. He was completely awake, and there was no longer any trace of pain on his face. You're awake, Lu Bai said indifferently, and his face became calm again. Why didn't you make a move? Yi Xian said calmly. At this moment, there was an indescribable aura on his body. This aura was somewhat similar to Huang, but also completely different. I don't want to take advantage of you. I will wait for you to truly awaken. At that time, you and I will naturally fight to the death, Lu Bai said calmly. In the immemorial era, you fought against the heavens. You were able to sweep through the entire immemorial era. Unfortunately, You are not to Huang's opponent, Yi Xian said. Aren't you Huang? Lu Bai said with a frown. I'm just me, Yi Xian said. Lu Bai was startled. He carefully stared at Yi Xian, and a trace of doubt flashed across his eyes. This was because the current Yi Xian gave him an extremely mysterious feeling. He was somewhat unable to determine whether the current Yi Xian was Huang or the present Yi Xian of this world. You don't need to guess. I am only myself. Whether it is Yi Xian or Huang, they are all just names, Yi Xian said indifferently. In fact, Yi Xian had experienced unimaginable torture in his mind. He had been constantly switching between himself and Huang, and his soul had almost collapsed and died. In the end, Yi Xian calmed himself down. He finally realized that no matter who he was only himself. In this world his name was Yi Xian. Even if Huang was his previous life had already passed away, and he was the only one who still existed in this world. That Dark Emperor's throne actually didn't have any mysteries. It only left behind a fragment of Huang's memory. When Yi Xian sat on the Dark Emperor's throne, he inherited the memories of desolation. He even relied on the ancient power left behind by desolation to scare hell away. From these memories of Huang, Yi Xian understood many secrets of the three great eras. Although these memories were only a part of them, it was enough for Yi Xian to understand many unknown things. Huang, the number one expert of the ancient desolate era. After the three great eras were destroyed, Huang also disappeared, leaving only a bit of his true spirit to reincarnate. This bit of true spirit turned into Yi Xian, so the saying that Huang was Yi Xian's previous life wasn't wrong. However, in this life, Yi Xian was only himself. When Yi Xian understood this, he no longer bothered about who he was, because in this life, he was only himself and not anyone else. Back then, you said that you wanted to create the strongest technique of all time, but you chose to transform into the Tao. From the looks of it, you have already taken the most crucial step in this life, said Lu Bai. Rumble. Yi Xian raised his palms as heaven-bearing samsara halos appeared. The vast heavenly door opened behind him, as a smile curled up the corner of Yi Xian's mouth. This technique is called the heaven-burying art, Yi Xian said softly. Heaven-burying art? Lu Bai muttered as he looked at him. Then he slowly nodded and said, Desolate heaven technique, heaven-burying art. You are about to take the final step. You are indeed ahead of everyone. 3 eras as one. Heaven's retribution and earth's transformation. This is my destiny, Yi Xian said softly. Past, present, future, 3 eras as one. Lu Bai let out a long sigh. He looked up at the starry sky, his eyes filled with indescribable loneliness. His white clothes also appeared lonely and desolate. Brother Bai, have you not woken up yet? Suddenly, Yi Xian walked in front of Lu Bai. He placed one hand on Lu Bai's shoulder, as his eyes were as deep as an ancient pool. Boom! Lu Bai's expression instantly changed. The primordial divine light rippled, and directly pushed Yi Xian away. A trace of anger flashed through his star-like eyes. I told you before that I am not Lu Bai. I am the number 1 immemorial divine king Gu Taichu. Your brother Bai has already disappeared forever. Lu Bai scolded coldly. Gu Taichu. Yi Xian shook his head slightly. When his eyes opened and closed, the light of samsara flickered faintly. Gu Taichu has already disappeared. In this life, you are only Lu Bai. Why are you clinging on to the memories of the past and forgetting yourself? Yi Xian let out a long sigh. You don't need to confuse me. I am Gu Taichu, not some Lu Bai. Suddenly, Lu Bai's eyes turned crazy. His ethereal temperament no longer existed. He was hysterically roaring at Yi Xian. Obviously, Yi Xian's words seemed to have hit his soft spot, causing his emotions to become extremely unstable. Brother Bai, whether you believe it or not, if you can't even find your true heart, then you will really become Gu Taichu. Yi Xian frowned. Yi Xian had experienced desolation's memories and awakened his true heart. No one knew Lu Bai's current situation better than him. Lu Bai had never died. He had only been attacked by Gu Taichu's memories, making him believe that he was the number 1 immemorial divine king. Suddenly, Lu Bai's expression turned ferocious as he let out a painful roar. Terrifying immemorial divine light appeared around him, and even sent Yi Xian flying. Yi Xian also spat out a large amount of blood. This shocking land was too terrifying. Even though Yi Xian had obtained Desolation's memories, the difference between his cultivation and Lu Bai's was like heaven and earth. Chapter 1821. This also caused him to suffer injuries from Lu Bai's aura. However, Yi Xian's expression remained calm, because he believed that Lu Bai wouldn't harm him. You are you, and you have never been anyone else. If those distant memories can make you Gu Taichu, then are you still the Lu Bai who has dazzled through the ages? Are you still Yi Xian's best friend? Yi Xian's voice was like a bell, constantly exploding in Lu Bai's ears, making him scream in pain. His mind was on the verge of collapse. Gu Taichu's life goal was to defeat Huang. You didn't kill me just now, because you are Lu Bai, right? Yi Xian shouted. Don't say any more, ah. Lu Bai screamed in pain. His eyes had turned scarlet red, and terrifying blood vessels appeared in the whites of his eyes, proving that the pain he was experiencing was extremely terrifying. Brother Bai, Yi Xian shouted loudly, hoping to wake Lu Bai up and find his true self. Boom! In the next moment, Lu Bai turned into a beam of light and disappeared amidst his painful screams. Obviously, he chose to escape because he was unable to wake up from the impact of Gu Taichu's memories. Looking at Lu Bai leaving, Yi Xian was powerless to chase after him. Even if he wanted to with his current cultivation, he could not catch up. Brother Bai, when will you be able to pass this heart's tribulation? Yi Xian whispered in loneliness. He could not help Lu Bai, and could only rely on Lu Bai to pass this heart's tribulation. If Lu Bai could not find his true self, then he would really become Gu Taichu, and would no longer be Yi Xian's best friend. There would definitely be a battle of life and death between the two. Yi Xian did not want to see this result, but there was nothing he could do. He could only hope that Lu Bai could pass this heart's tribulation by himself. He also believed that with Lu Bai's perseverance, he would definitely be able to find himself again. Sigh. In the eternal starry sky, Yi Xian was speechless with a sorrowful sigh. He felt even more melancholy in his heart. Wang. Yi Xian suppressed his vexed thoughts and teleported away. He could not help Lu Bai for the time being, and he had more important things to do. After inheriting a portion of Famine's memories, Yi Xian learned many secrets unknown to others. He also understood the path he had to walk. This was a desolate region of the starry sky. It was located in a corner of the Chaosverse, and virtually no living beings would ever set foot in this place. In the vast starry sky, everything was silent. Yi Xian sat cross-legged amidst the silent starry sky. He seemed like an old monk in meditation, and he was silent to the extreme like a rock that didn't move or speak. He wanted to make a breakthrough here, and step into the next realm, which was the heaven-defying realm. Heaven-defying realm. This was a major realm after the immortal 12 heavenly gates. Even in the strongest 3 great eras, the heaven-defying realm was an extremely terrifying existence. It was only one step away from the heaven-shaking absolute realm. Wang. The void swayed and rippled. Yi Xian flipped his palm, and the 3 lives 3 worlds flower appeared in his hand, blooming with a beautiful tricolored halo. After consuming the 3 lives 3 worlds flower, Yi Xian would be able to step into the heaven-defying realm by relying on the vast energy contained within. Boom! A moment later, Yi Xian's 5 fingers exerted force, and he crushed the 3 lives 3 worlds flower in his hand. An unimaginable amount of energy erupted, and then Yi Xian swallowed it into his stomach. Rumble! The eternal starry sky rumbled, and even the entire Chaosverse trembled. Many of the laws that permeated the Chaosverse began to crumble. Break! Yi Xian's mouth was like a thunderbolt, and his tongue glowed with divine light. His body flickered with divine light as the vast heavenly gates collapsed, transforming into streams of reincarnation energy that poured into his head. Swish! 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 Yi Xian's hands formed one shocking incantation after another, as though he was deriving an ancient technique. Mysterious runes grew in the starry sky as the heaven's burial incantation circulated madly within his body, and an extremely terrifying aura erupted from his body. Bind! Yi Xian opened his eyes, and his hands formed a heaven-defying incantation gesture. A mysterious symbol flickered between his fingers, and then turned into a heaven-defying beam of light that illuminated the entire chaos verse. What was heaven-defying? Not believing in heaven and earth, only believing in oneself. Using one's own strength to resist the universe. Using one's own body to defy all laws in the chaos verse. This was the heaven-defying realm. With a technique in one's heart, there was only one. Yi Xian's breakthrough into the heaven-defying realm could be said to be a matter of course. It wasn't just the 3 lives 3 worlds flower that helped him break through, but also the memories that desolation had left him. In the desolate starry sky, the primal chaos trembled. Yi Xian calmly stood up, and his entire body blossomed with flawless light, as though he had become the brightest star in the chaos verse. Under the starry sky, unparalleled since time immemorial, Yi Xian's body emanated a powerful aura. This aura contained all things in the universe, and every word and action of his carried unimaginable might. His words were the law, and his actions were the law. The universe was vast and desolate, and the heaven and earth were profound and yellow. Everything was within his thoughts. Stars come. Yi Xian pointed out with a finger. This finger was like a star wielding a brush, and it embellished the desolate starry sky with one great star after another, creating things out of thin air. Wind come. Woo, woo, woo. Yi Xian gently rolled up his sleeves, and a chaotic astral wind was born out of thin air, whistling through every inch of the vast starry sky. Rainfall. Swish, swish, swish. Stars fell from the desolate starry sky, and in an instant, they transformed into dazzling rivers of stars that rumbled and surged through the vast starry sky. The clear is the sky, and the turbid is the earth. The vast universe and the eternal universe are all within my thoughts. Yi Xian stood with his hands behind his back, and a smile appeared at the corners of his mouth. The power of the heaven-defying realm was slowly blooming. Rumble. Suddenly, the starry universe dimmed, and an extremely powerful will descended. Even boundless black clouds appeared above Yi Xian's head, and a terrifying face gradually appeared. The will of chaos. Yi Xian looked at it indifferently, without the slightest change in expression. He had just broken into the heaven-defying realm, and the will of the chaotic universe had descended. However, he did not take it to heart, because he was not one of those forbidden dead people who were struggling at death's door. Crack! Streaks of crimson tribulation lightning flashed within the boundless black clouds, and a world-destroying aura burst forth. The face of the will of the chaotic universe twisted ferociously, and its chaotic eyes slowly opened. The so-called will of chaos is nothing more than a law. The so-called tribulation is useless against me. If you have some intelligence, then retreat. Otherwise, if I attack, it will be earth-shattering and the chaos will be destroyed. Yi Xian spoke indifferently. He seemed to be talking to himself, but he was actually talking to the will of the chaotic universe. The tribulation clouds froze, and the chaos was silent. When Yi Xian finished speaking, the tribulation clouds above his head kept dispersing, and the face of the will of the chaotic universe struggled violently. Its chaotic eyes flickered slightly, and in the end, it closed again and completely dissipated from the starry sky. The heaven-defying realm did not fear the world. Yi Xian seemed to be speaking softly, but it was actually a warning. It made the will of chaos hesitate slightly, but in the end, it did not send down the tribulation. This was because the chaotic universe could not bear the consequences of such a thing. Moreover, it was the 11th Eon, and the great apocalypse had not yet arrived. Chapter 1822. To defy the heavens and become invincible. That was the true essence of the heaven-defying realm. Perhaps calling himself invincible was a bit of an exaggeration, but ever since Yi Xian had stepped into this realm, he had seen that no one in the entire chaos verse was a match for him, save for a select few who could shake the heavens. At this point, Yi Xian had reached the pinnacle. He was only one step away from becoming one of those few who could shake the heavens. However, Yi Xian's goal wasn't just to shake the heavens. His goal was to surpass desolation and even himself, reaching a realm that no one had ever reached in the eons. However, the road had to be taken one step at a time. Yi Xian had just broken into the heaven-defying realm, so he had to first peek into the heaven-defying realm. Only then could he transcend. Inheriting a portion of Desolation's memories allowed Yi Xian to clearly see his own path. It was impossible for him to step into the heaven-defying realm in the current chaos verse. What did it mean to shake the heavens? If the primordial chaos was destroyed, he would not be destroyed. If all things died, he would not die. Even if the eternal universe collapsed and reincarnated, the heaven-defying realm would not be affected in the slightest. This was what it meant to be a heaven-defying realm, an existence that stood at the apex of the eternal universe, an existence that could be said to be everlasting. However, Yi Xian's desire to become one of the few who could shake the heavens was impossible. It was nothing more than a fantasy. In the current chaos verse, breaking into the heaven-defying realm was his limit. There was no way he could become one of those few who could shake the heavens. To put it bluntly, in the current chaos verse, there was no power that could make Yi Xian a heaven-defying realm. Only the three strongest eras could create a heaven-defying realm, but that was impossible in the current chaos verse. Otherwise, when the will of the chaos verse had just descended, it would not have left in such a hurry. The suppression of the chaos verse was simply too great. The 3,000 great Daos did not manifest, and the world's origin energy did not exist. Under such circumstances, how could Yi Xian possibly become a heaven-defying realm powerhouse? However, Yi Xian wasn't disappointed. If it were before, he wouldn't have been able to see the path ahead. But after inheriting a portion of Desolation's memories, he already had a plan. Huang had already passed away. Only the present world's Yi Xian remained. However, back then, Huang had left behind 3 inherited memories. One of the legacy memories was left behind in an ancient forbidden land. It was also the last pure land of the ancient era, and it had just been inherited by Yi Xian. The remaining 2 inherited memories were left behind in the Desolate Age and the Primordial Age. Originally, there were 3 Deadlands in the world. They were the Desolate Deadlands, the Archaic Deadlands, and the Ancient Deadlands. However, after the passage of countless years, only the ancient Forbidden Lands remained. As for the other 2 Forbidden Lands, they had long since been destroyed. As for the other 2 inheritance memories that Desolate left behind, they were stored in these 2 great danger zones. Unfortunately, these 2 danger zones had long since vanished, so these 2 inheritance memories were naturally no longer there. Fortunately, Yi Xian was not disappointed even though the 2 danger zones were gone. He still had other methods. This method was very simple: break past and present heaven and earth, reverse time and space, and use the river of eternity to return to the 3 strongest eras. Naturally, he could inherit the other 2 inheritance memories. Of course, inheriting all of Desolate's inheritance memories wasn't Yi Xian's true goal. He just wanted to know what was behind that door, and what Desolate had experienced after entering that door. Moreover, the most important thing was that only by returning to the 3 strongest eras could Yi Xian have a chance to peek into the realm of the heaven-shocking Deadlands, allowing him to become a person of the heaven-shocking Deadlands. Otherwise, with the current chaotic universe, the heaven-shattering realm was his limit. Even if he inherited a part of Desolate's inheritance memories, he still wouldn't be able to become a person of the heaven-shocking Deadlands. Return to the past, pursue the past, and see just what kind of golden age the 3 strongest eras were. Just what kind of peerless glory did those heaven-defying powerhouses and heaven-shocking Deadlands have? In the vast starry sky, the stars froze. Yi Xian stood with his hands behind his back, murmuring in his sleep. He was confident that he could return to the past, because with his heaven-shattering realm cultivation, he could definitely achieve his goal by controlling the river of eternity. But before that, he still had many things to do. When everything was ready, it would be time for him to carry out his plan. On a lonely star, Yi Xian sat cross-legged. A small cauldron appeared in his hand. It was the 11th heaven-shattering cauldron he had obtained in the ancient Deadlands. The small cauldron was simple and unadorned, its body modeled. At a glance, it looked like an ordinary stone cauldron, but the patterns on the cauldron were simple and mysterious, giving off a profound and ancient aura. Desolate heaven technique? Yi Xian murmured, his burning gaze falling on the small cauldron, a hint of hope flashing through his eyes. According to Desolate's memories, the 11th small cauldron contained a forbidden heaven technique, and this forbidden heaven technique was Desolate's main cultivation technique, as well as Desolate's lifelong cultivation technique in Tao. Forbidden heaven technique. It was an extremely heavy word that could even cause one's soul to tremble, making one feel uneasy in front of these 4 words. In the eternal universe, there was more than one forbidden heavenly law. Every heaven-shocking extremist had mastered a forbidden heavenly law. For example, Liu Bai's immemorial divine heaven technique was also a forbidden heaven technique. Another example was the ancient town prison mantra, which was also a forbidden heaven technique. Desolate was naturally no exception. His forbidden heaven technique was called the Desolate Heaven Technique, and was also known as the number 1 forbidden heaven technique of all time. At this moment, this Desolate Heaven technique was hidden in the 11th small cauldron, and it was personally sealed by Desolate back then, waiting for Yi Xian to reopen it in this life. In Desolate's inherited memories, there was naturally a way to open the 11th small cauldron. This was also the reason why Yi Xian's mood was fluctuating. Once, Yi Xian had a feeling that there was a mysterious existence that had been pushing him forward. Ever since Yi Xian inherited Desolate's memories, he understood that the so-called mysterious existence was actually his previous life. To put it bluntly, it was just a path he had paved for himself, so that he could smoothly grow in this life. At this moment, Yi Xian was excited. As long as he opened the 11th small cauldron, he would be able to obtain the Desolate Heaven technique, and this cultivation technique would undoubtedly be known as the number 1 technique of all time. Even among the many forbidden heaven techniques, the Desolate Heaven technique was definitely ranked in the top 3. It was also known as the number 1 technique of all time because of Desolate. However, Yi Xian knew himself well. Although the Desolate Heaven technique was known as the number 1 technique of all time, it was only built on the strength of Desolate. If one were to talk about the strength of the forbidden heaven techniques, the Desolate Heaven technique would only be ranked 3rd, with 2 other heaven techniques ranked ahead of it. There were 8 forbidden heaven techniques, and they represented 8 shocking deadlands. In the primordial era, only Desolate survived, and he was also known as the number 1 expert of the primordial era. In the primordial era, there were 3 people who survived. Gu Taichi was known as the number 1 godly king of the primordial era, and he was the present Liu Bai. Chapter 1823. Prison was one of the 4 people who had survived from ancient times. However, he could not be considered the strongest person in ancient times. He could only be considered average. From Desolation's inherited memories, Yi Xian naturally knew the names of the other 5 people. He also knew the taboo heavenly techniques they cultivated. However, Yi Xian did not have the time to think about this for the time being. What he needed to do now was to open the 11th tiny cauldron and obtain the Desolate Heaven technique within. Qi. Finally, Yi Xian moved. His hands formed ancient and profound seals as wisps of desolate aura were released. They transformed into blurry streams of light that shimmered in his hands. Weng. The heavens chanted sutras as ancient desolation appeared. A baffling fluctuation emitted from Yi Xian's hands as a blurry and mysterious rune condensed. This was the key to opening the 11th tiny cauldron. Only by obtaining the correct opening formula could he open it and obtain the Desolate Heaven technique within. Open! Suddenly, Yi Xian roared as he struck the tiny cauldron with the ancient desolate rune in his hand. Rumble! Boom! The next moment, an extremely terrifying boom was heard. The 11th tiny cauldron was shaking violently as a desolate aura circulated around the cauldron. An aura that Yi Xian was familiar with burst out from the cauldron. Boom! A blinding light burst out from the tiny cauldron's interior. Immediately, Yi Xian felt the world spin as he was drowned by the light. This was a blurry space. Ancient desolate runes swam in it as they released an inexplicable aura that made Yi Xian's soul tremble. When Yi Xian's consciousness entered this place, before he could react, the mysterious ancient desolate runes seemed to contain intelligence as they cheered in joy. Desolation. The ancient roar spread as the desolation spread. The blurry space trembled in horror as an indescribable roar sounded in Yi Xian's ears. The roar seemed to come from ancient times. It gave him a splitting headache, but he found it extremely familiar. However, he could not recall where he had heard it from. At the same time, one by one, the ancient characters surged towards Yi Xian and crazily surged into his consciousness. Numerous extremely obscure incantations also appeared in his mind. Ah! Yi Xian was screaming in pain. He felt as though his soul was about to explode. This was because the desolate heaven technique was too terrifying. It was incomprehensible to him, as though it was about to shatter his soul. But in the next moment a miracle happened. A desolate aura began to grow as Yi Xian's roars gradually faded away. The desolate heaven dharma, that he could not understand, had miraculously been comprehended by Yi Xian. Familiar. It was too familiar. The desolate heaven dharma was a part of Yi Xian's body. It allowed Yi Xian to completely understand the true essence of the desolate heaven dharma. There was nothing that he did not understand. It was as if he had cultivated this taboo heavenly technique for countless years. No one understood the terror of this taboo heavenly technique better than him. Kacha! The gray hazy air shattered. Following that, Yi Xian's consciousness emitted a loud boom, as his consciousness instantly returned to his body. In the outside world, Wang! A wisp of desolate aura began to grow around Yi Xian's body. The gray light circled around his body. This was the power of the desolate heaven. It had finally appeared in the world. Boom! Yi Xian opened his eyes. His pupils were spinning as the desolate light swirled in his eyes. It even affected billions of miles of the cosmos, causing the cosmos to show signs of shattering. Desolate heaven dharma? Yi Xian slowly got up as he muttered to himself. He raised his hands in a daze. Clearly, he could not believe that he had instantly learned the door of heaven's taboo heavenly technique. Originally, Yi Xian had already made preparations to study the desolate heaven dharma. After all, it was a taboo heavenly technique. It would be extremely difficult to master it. However, Yi Xian never expected that after he obtained the desolate heaven dharma, he felt as if he had cultivated it for a very, very long time. It could be said that he had the technique at his fingertips. Desolate heaven finger. Boom! Yi Xian raised his finger and pointed at the cosmos in front of him. An extremely terrifying scene appeared at that moment. Rumble! A gigantic finger that resembled an ancient pillar of heaven appeared in the cosmos. With Yi Xian's finger pointing, billions of miles of the cosmos collapsed. All that was left was an endless black hole vortex. This finger was extremely terrifying. It was able to produce such a terrifying might. Even Yi Xian was stunned on the spot. He did not wake up even after a long time. It was terrifying. After a full 10 breaths of time, Yi Xian finally woke up and let out an exclamation of surprise. His body was still surrounded by a desolate aura. Strands of desolate heaven energy surrounded his body, making him look mysterious and lonely. Is this the desolate heaven dharma? Is this the dharma and Tao of my past? Yi Xian examined his body. He could feel the desolate heaven power circulating in his body. It gave him an extremely familiar feeling. At this moment, Yi Xian finally began to believe that desolation was indeed his previous incarnation. If not, how could he feel that he had cultivated the desolate heaven dharma for a very, very long time without any stagnation? Furthermore, he could use the desolate heaven finger at will. Dharma of my past life, Tao of my present life? Yi Xian's eyes were deep as he muttered to himself. If breaking through to the heaven-defying realm had allowed him to be reborn and become incomparably powerful, then Yi Xian, who had obtained the desolate heaven technique, had once again risen to an extremely terrifying stage. Rumble! At the next moment, Yi Xian's body trembled. He was conjuring the heaven burial art in his body as a wisp of samsara power circled around him. Wang! Something astonishing happened. When the desolate heaven dharma and the heaven burial art circulated in Yi Xian's body at the same time, the two forces did not repel each other. Instead, they showed signs of fusing together. However, this was only Yi Xian's feeling. Although the two forces had fused together, they seemed to be lacking something very important. Past life, present life, and future life. When the three worlds fuse into one, it will transform into the strongest Dharma of all time. Will it be able to transcend the eternal universe? Yi Xian muttered as his eyes flashed. He can transform into the future. Boom! The world froze as time stirred. With a thought, Yi Xian cast future transfiguration, causing a phantom image of the future to appear. In the past, Yi Xian needed to cast future transfiguration when the primal chaos mysteries did not appear. But now that he had broken into the heaven-defying realm, he did not even place the will of the primal chaos universe in his eyes. He naturally could not be restrained by the so-called primal chaos mysteries. Merge. Looking at the phantom image of the future that appeared, Yi Xian's heart palpitated violently. He conjured future transfiguration, allowing the phantom image of the future to merge with him. Wang. The phantom image of the future fused into Yi Xian's body as the desolate heaven Dharma, and the heaven burial art circulated crazily. A heart-palpitating force grew in Yi Xian's body as an indescribable aura emanated. Boom! The next moment, what Yi Xian was hoping for did not happen. Instead, his body trembled as he spewed out a mouthful of blood. The phantom image of the future shattered and vanished. Pua! The corner of Yi Xian's mouth was stained with blood as his face turned slightly pale. His bold actions had caused him to suffer an extremely terrifying backlash. Chapter 1824. 3 worlds as one. These words sounded simple, but how could it be that simple? It contained the most terrifying danger in all of eternity. The future is illusory. Neither the Dharma nor the Tao can be seen. Yi Xian gently wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, as a deep look flashed in his eyes. He did not show any disappointment. Clearly, Yi Xian had only been experimenting. The result was something that Yi Xian had already tasted. It was impossible for him to achieve 3 worlds as one. Firstly, the future was illusory. Neither the Dharma nor the Tao had taken form. Even Yi Xian knew nothing about his future self. Secondly, the heaven burial art had yet to reach the large success stage. It also meant that it was not perfect. A perfect heaven burial art would require Yi Xian to cultivate it to an astounding level. Just these 2 points made it impossible for Yi Xian to achieve 3 worlds as one. However, the desolate heaven Dharma in his body was a complete taboo heavenly Dharma. This made Yi Xian understand a principle. He still needed to perfect the heaven burial art. At the same time, he needed to touch upon the mysteries of his future self. Only by achieving these 2 conditions could he achieve 3 worlds as one and create the strongest Dharma of all eternity. Phew! Yi Xian spat out a turbid breath and calmed his tumultuous emotions. He began to recover from his injuries. The desolate heaven Dharma was indeed powerful. It was indeed worthy of being the Dharma formulation of the strongest person in the primordial era. Yi Xian only used 3 days to recover from all his injuries. He also returned to his peak state. The starry sky shimmered as the ancient sutra appeared. The ancient bronze sutra appeared as pages after pages flipped in the starry sky. Every page had a tiny cauldron phantom image engraved on it. It emitted a mysterious and ancient aura. Retrieve! Yi Xian held the ancient bronze sutra in his hand, as the 11th tiny cauldron fused into the ancient sutra. At this moment, there were 11 tiny cauldrons in the ancient bronze sutra. He was just short of one final cauldron to gather the 12 heaven-shattering cauldrons. In the starry sky above all things, Yi Xian looked at the ancient bronze sutra in his hand. He gently flipped through every page as the 11 tiny cauldrons flashed past his eyes. There's only one small cauldron left. When Yi Xian flipped to the last page, he looked at the last blank page with a deep look in his eyes. The bronze ancient scripture had 12 pages, corresponding to the 12 heaven-shattering cauldrons. These things were all brought out by Huang from that great door. Although Yi Xian had inherited a portion of Desolation's memories, it did not contain any memories of what had happened behind the door. Therefore, Yi Xian didn't know what the 12th small cauldron contained, and what would happen when all 12 small cauldrons were gathered. However, Yi Xian had a faint premonition that the 12th cauldron was extremely crucial. It might be related to his future self. Furthermore, Yi Xian had a feeling that the 12 heaven-shattering cauldrons might contain all of his techniques and daos. This feeling was extremely strong, and Yi Xian was very convinced. However, Yi Xian had to put the matter of the cauldrons aside for now. Right now, he needed to plan how to quickly become a world-shaking figure. After all, only personal strength was fundamental. He still had some things to do before using the timeless river to reverse time. Only with a clear mind could he head to the distant and unknown three great eras. In the vast starry sky of the chaotic universe, in a corner of the cosmos, a dim star sat on top of a figure struggling at death's door. Strands of forbidden deathly light lingered around him. Pff. He spat out a mouthful of black blood. His body was badly mangled, and the dim deathly chi was extremely weak. His scarlet eyes were somewhat listless. Buzz. With a thought, heaven and earth could be so near yet so far. Yi Xian quietly appeared here. He stood with his hands behind his back, as he indifferently looked at this person. His eyes were devoid of sorrow or joy, and only had a calm expression. You're here. Undying Heaven Lord slowly raised his head to look at Yi Xian. His face revealed a trace of desolation. He wasn't surprised at Yi Xian's arrival. Let's settle this once and for all. Yi Xian strolled to Undying Heaven Lord's side. He didn't release any power from his body, and Undying Heaven Lord didn't attack either. He allowed Yi Xian to come to his side. I've lost completely. Undying Heaven Lord bitterly muttered. Actually, I have to thank you. If it weren't for the pressure you gave me, I wouldn't have been able to cultivate to this level. Yi Xian said calmly, as if he was chatting with an old friend. Are you mocking me? Undying Heaven Lord suddenly raised his head. There was some unwillingness and madness in his eyes. But if one looked carefully, they would find that there was a deep helplessness in his eyes. This was the unwillingness and helplessness of walking to a dead end. Given my current cultivation base, do you think I would be so bored? Yi Xian calmly spoke. Yi Xian, can you not kill me? Undying Heaven Lord was in a daze. What do you think? Yi Xian counterasked. Yi Xian, I really don't want to die. Please spare my life. I can be your servant. I only beg you to spare my life. Undying Heaven Lord trembled as he spoke. He humbly begged Yi Xian. He only wanted to live on. He didn't want his soul to be destroyed. Sigh. Yi Xian let out a long sigh. He patted the shoulder of the Undying Heaven Lord and said, Undying, if it wasn't for the enmity between us, I would actually admire you. But now, you've disappointed me too much. If you were willing to die, you would still be an enemy worthy of my respect. But now you are begging for your life. This isn't the Undying Heaven Lord I know. Back then, you were one of the strongest through the ancient times. How lofty was your spirit. But look at yourself now. Where is your past self? The Undying Heaven Lord was stunned. Her eyes were filled with bewilderment as her body and mind trembled. You have already lost your heart of invincibility. When you chose to become prison's dog, you are no longer the Undying Heaven Lord of the past. Yi Xian spoke in a heavy voice. What is the meaning of living? Is it like you are now struggling at death's door? Look at yourself now. You are like a dog that has lost its master. Where is your master? Yi Xian stared at the starry sky as his voice rang out in Undying Heaven Lord's ears. Undying, I can spare your life. But do you really want to live without any dignity? Yi Xian suddenly turned around. His eyes were as sharp as swords as he stared at Undying Heaven Lord. This was an interrogation on the soul. It caused Undying Heaven Lord's heart to tremble. Ha ha! All of a sudden, Undying Heaven Lord laughed maniacally. As he laughed, tears of blood flowed out of his eyes. An extremely desolate aura was emitted from his body. Yi Xian, although I hate you because you destroyed me with your own hands, you are right. How am I still the Undying Heaven Lord of the past? I am just a dog that has lost its master with no dignity. Undying Heaven Lord roared hysterically. His entire body was covered in a terrifying aura of death. I didn't expect my last bit of dignity to be given to me by you, Yi Xian. What a joke. Chapter 1825. Ha ha ha. The Undying Heaven Lord laughed maniacally. He viewed Yi Xian as a peerless enemy, and wanted nothing more than to eat his flesh and drink his blood. But who would have thought that at the end of his life, it would be this great enemy, who gave him the last bit of dignity? After dozens of breaths of time, the undying Heaven Lord finally calmed down. His eyes were extremely calm, and there was no longer any fluctuation in them. Yi Xian, I once told you that you and I are the same kind of people. If we weren't enemies, we could have been very good friends. Unfortunately, there's no more chance for that. Thank you for giving me the last bit of dignity. I've been defeated by you, Yi Xian. I'm indeed inferior to you. After the undying Heaven Lord calmly finished speaking, he suddenly stared fixedly at Yi Xian, as an unruly smile appeared on his face. But as your enemy, I will never die in your hands, because I'm the strongest throughout the ages. I'm still the unparalleled undying Heaven Lord. I'll never be anyone's lackey. Rumble. In the next moment, the undying Heaven Lord's body expanded. He actually chose to self-detonate amidst his wild laughter. Perhaps this was the last bit of pride and dignity left in the undying Heaven Lord. To self-detonate in front of his peerless enemy, perhaps this was the best ending for him. Boom! The forbidden self-detonation destroyed heaven and earth. The terrifying forbidden death ray swept across the starry cosmos and turned countless stars into ashes. But it couldn't harm Yi Xian in the slightest. Yi Xian allowed the undying Heaven Lord's self-detonation to sweep past his body. He stood there motionlessly and calmly watched as the undying Heaven Lord turned into ashes. In the struggle for the great Tao, if you don't advance, you'll fall behind. You can be considered an ambitious and ruthless person. Perhaps this is the best ending for you. Yi Xian sighed softly. Ever since he'd entered the Chaos Verse, the undying Heaven Lord had been there for most of his life. Without the pressure the undying Heaven Lord had given him, he might not have been able to reach his current level of cultivation. Yi Xian's mood wasn't the slightest bit excited when his once peerless enemy fell at his feet. All he had was a trace of sadness and loneliness. In the past, under the pressure of the undying Heaven Lord, in order to surpass or even kill him, he cultivated madly without regard for anything else. But now, seeing the undying Heaven Lord's body and soul destroyed, Yi Xian's heart was filled with desolation. He now understood what it meant to be lonely at the top. There was no one in the Chaos Verse who could match him. The only one he pursued was the one who could rival him. The undying Heaven Lord's life could be said to be breathtaking. But Yi Xian's appearance overshadowed all of his brilliance. Everything related to him turned to dust. Yi Xian sighed. He stared at the starry sky, his eyes as deep as an ancient pond. Because he could sense that someone was secretly watching him. Prison. Yi Xian didn't need to guess. He could sense that the person watching him was prison. He hadn't saved the undying Heaven Lord, because the undying Heaven Lord had no value to him. Prison didn't appear, not because he didn't want to kill Yi Xian, but because Yi Xian had inherited a strand of memory from desolation. He didn't know if attacking Yi Xian would draw the attention of that legendary man again. This was his greatest fear. The world was silent as he watched from afar. Yi Xian stood there for a long time, but prison didn't appear. He stepped into the starry sky and quietly disappeared. With a thought, the world could be so close yet so far. With Yi Xian's current cultivation, he could go anywhere with a thought. His heaven-defying cultivation made him unrestricted by the Chaos Verse. The central domain, the paramount devil shrine. Boom! The forbidden light of death swept out in all directions. The paramount devil shrine suffered a devastating blow, and countless buildings were reduced to ashes. Tell Yi Xian to get the hell out here. The sky-devouring demon master stood proudly in the sky, and the terrifying forbidden light of death swept out in all directions. The rolling demonic light combined with the forbidden death chi made him look extremely terrifying. Bang! 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 Yi Xian's 3 disciples were all sent flying. They coughed up mouthfuls of blood and crashed heavily on the ground. You're courting death, sky-devouring. Extreme Emotion Master rose against the heavens and unleashed his extreme emotion technique at sky-devouring demon master. How dare you show off your insignificant skill before an expert? Bang! The sky-devouring demon master slapped out, shattering the extreme emotion art. He stretched out his 5 fingers and grabbed the extreme emotion master by the throat, lifting her into the air. Masteress! The 3 disciples roared in horror. They unleashed their strongest cultivation and attacked the sky-devouring demon master, trying to save the extreme emotion master. Unfortunately, the sky-devouring demon master had just entered the forbidden realm. How could the three disciples be his match? Boom! One strike. With just one strike, the three disciples were covered in blood and crashed heavily on the ground. They were no match for the sky-devouring demon master. Yi Qingmei, you bitch. Tell me, where is Yi Xian? The sky-devouring demon master's face was ferocious. When he turned into the forbidden realm, he immediately rushed to the paramount devil shrine to kill Yi Xian. If he was here, you would have died long ago. The extreme emotion master scolded coldly. Ha ha ha. The sky-devouring demon master laughed wildly, as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. Him. Now that I've turned into the forbidden realm, no one in the entire chaotic universe can defeat me. Killing him is as easy as slaughtering a dog. The sky-devouring demon master growled. He was extremely arrogant after turning into a forbidden realm. He didn't take anyone seriously at all. You'll regret this, Yi Qingmei said coldly. Yi Qingmei scolded coldly, but there was a look of helplessness in her eyes. Now that the sky-devouring demon lord had become a taboo, they were no match for the sky-devouring demon lord. Regret? The sky-devouring demon master sneered. He carefully looked at the extreme emotion master, and a trace of surprise flashed in his eyes. Then he smiled strangely. Since that little bastard Yi Xian isn't here, I'll take you back to the sky-devouring demonic technique, and have a good taste. You dare? Yi Qingmei's expression changed. She activated the extreme emotion power. But unfortunately, she couldn't escape from the sky-devouring demon master's control. I don't dare? The sky-devouring demon master sneered. His 5 fingers reached toward Yi Qingmei, and there was deep hatred in his eyes. Since Yi Xian wasn't here, he would take interest from Yi Qingmei. Only then could he dispel the hatred in his heart. Sky-devouring demon master, you dare to humiliate my master's wife. I'll tear you to pieces. The 3 disciples roared. They wanted to get up and fight again, but they were seriously injured and didn't have any strength left to stop it. Yi Xian won't let you go. Rumble. Yi Qingmei scolded coldly. She didn't want to be humiliated by the sky-devouring demon master. Her body began to expand, and she was ready to explode on the spot. He hid like a dog. How can he not let me go? The sky-devouring demon master laughed arrogantly. What are you laughing at? Suddenly, before the sky-devouring demon master could stop laughing, a faint voice sounded in his ear. It was also this voice that caused the sky-devouring demon master's body to stiffen. This voice was too familiar. Yi Xian. Rumble. The sky-devouring demon master roared. He suddenly turned around and saw Yi Xian looking at him indifferently. Sir. Master. As Yi Xian quietly appeared, Yi Qingmei cried tears of joy, and the 3 disciples shouted excitedly. However, in the next moment, Yi Qingmei's expression changed. She hurriedly reminded Yi Xian. The sky-devouring demon has become a taboo. Sir, you must be careful. Suddenly, without waiting for Yi Qingmei to finish speaking, she strangely disappeared. When she reappeared, she was already beside Yi Xian. Such a strange scene instantly caused Yi Qingmei to be stunned on the spot. She couldn't understand how Yi Xian saved her. How do you want to die? Yi Xian first patted Yi Qingmei's shoulder and gave her a reassuring look. Then, he looked indifferently at the sky-devouring demon master. A sinister and cold murderous intent quietly flashed across his eyes. This also meant that the sky-devouring demon master was destined to die a miserable death. Chapter 1826. How do I want to die? The sky-devouring demon master kept sizing up Yi Xian. He wanted to see how strong Yi Xian's cultivation was, but he realized that he couldn't see through Yi Xian. Yi Xian didn't emit any aura, nor did he have any aura that frightened him. He was like a mortal who didn't give him any sense of threat. Aren't you afraid of biting your tongue? You should ask me how you want to die. Maybe if you kneel down and beg me, I can give you a comfortable death. The sky-devouring demon master grinned, and the last bit of fear in his eyes didn't dissipate. To be honest, the sky-devouring demon master was still afraid of Yi Xian. However, when he saw that Yi Xian had the aura of a living person, his fear disappeared. The sky-devouring demon master was very conceited. He also believed that as long as Yi Xian didn't step into the forbidden realm, the 12 heaven gates wouldn't be his match. Mister, be careful. He's already a forbidden realm, Yi Qingmei reminded him softly. Forbidden realm? Yi Xian smiled faintly. With his current cultivation, the so-called forbidden realm was nothing in his eyes. At most, it was just a clown. Yi Xian, you little bastard. Die. Looking at Yi Xian's mocking face, the sky-devouring demon master was furious. He didn't believe that Yi Xian was his match. Boom! The sky-devouring demon master swallowed the heavens and the earth. Rays of forbidden death light swept across the universe. Those terrifying forbidden techniques swallowed Yi Xian. Master, be careful. Mister, retreat. Facing the attack of the sky-devouring demon master, everyone cried out anxiously. How could they not know how terrifying the sky-devouring demon master was? Freeze. The moment the words came out, everything froze. A simple word represented the truth of the ages and contained an unimaginable horror. Buzz. The heavens and the earth were like a curtain. Everything was motionless. The space-time of this world froze strangely. Even the dust and sand were no exception, let alone the sky-devouring demon master. Sky-devouring devil master. The sinister smile on his face was still there, but it was already extremely stiff. His entire body was fixed in the void in a diving posture, which was extremely laughable. How terrifying was the heaven-defying realm. Just a few words contained unparalleled might. The heaven-devouring demon master was merely a forbidden dead man. How could he be a match for Yi Xian? How could this be? The heaven-devouring demon lord could not move, but he could still speak. His pupils trembled as he looked at Yi Xian. A trembling roar came from his mouth. What is the strongest? What is taboo? Yi Xian strolled towards the sky-devouring demon master. With every step he took, the universe rumbled. Countless stars fell from the vast universe and gathered to form a startling picture of meteorites. With a single move, the heavens and earth changed colors. Heaven-defying experts weren't as strong as terminus experts in the 3 most powerful eras, but they still stood at the very pinnacle of power, let alone in the current chaos verse. A heaven-defying expert was equivalent to being invincible. In the current chaos verse, Yi Xian could dominate the entire chaos verse. No living creature could be his match. Boom! Yi Xian took a step forward and stood in front of the heaven-devouring demon master. As his eyes moved, the heaven-devouring demon master's fixed body finally broke free and fell to the ground with a loud bang. The heaven-devouring demon master had just regained control of his body. He retreated in horror as great terror grew in his heart. I'll kill you. Boom. The heaven-devouring demon master refused to believe that Yi Xian could be so strong that he could capture him with just a few words. This was simply a fantasy. Boom. The heaven-devouring demon master sublimated to the extreme and produced his strongest forbidden attack, which blasted towards Yi Xian. This attack could be considered his final killing move. Not only was it filled with the forbidden power of death, but it was also accompanied by his devouring great Tao. Kneel. It was as if the ancient sky was pressing down, as if the ancient thunder was exploding. Yi Xian stood with his hands behind his back and did not make a move. He only blurted out 2 simple words. Puff, puff, puff. Something strange and terrifying happened. The power on the heaven-devouring demon master's body exploded and disappeared. Hundreds of bloody holes appeared on his body, and a large amount of blood spurted out. As he wailed miserably, his knees gave way and he knelt at Yi Xian's feet. What was the meaning of the moon and the firefly? The current scene fully explained the meaning of this sentence. The heaven-devouring demon master did not even have a chance to make a move. In front of Yi Xian, he could only kneel like an ant. He had no other choice. I'll kill you. Kneeling in humiliation at Yi Xian's feet was simply an eternal nightmare for the heaven-devouring demon master. He screamed crazily and tried to stand up. Unfortunately, the heaven-devouring demon master could not get up at all. He felt as if the entire chaotic universe was on his back, and he could not even stand up. He could only pound the ground with his fists in pain and madness. Why is this happening? Why is this happening? The heaven-devouring demon lord roared in horror. He was unwilling to accept his defeat. He was a taboo figure. Shouldn't he be an invincible existence in the primal chaos universe? Why would he kneel at Yi Xian's feet like a dog? Are you convinced? Looking at the kneeling heaven-devouring demon master, Yi Xian stared at him calmly. There was no fluctuation in his eyes. He did not have the slightest interest in the heaven-devouring demon master. Weak. Too weak. Yi Xian used to think that the taboo character was unreachable. However, when he reached the peak step by step, he realized that the so-called taboo character was just SOSO. Yi Xian, you dog. I will never submit to you. The heaven-devouring demon master roared crazily. He kept struggling to get up, but he could not. Bang! Yi Xian lifted his right foot and stomped on the heaven-devouring demon master's head. Are you convinced? Yi Xian asked. I'll kill you. After being stepped on by Yi Xian, the heaven-devouring demon lord roared in anger and humiliation. He crazily circulated the cultivation within his body and erupted with an extremely terrifying might, wanting to flip Yi Xian over. Bang! In the next moment, Yi Xian's right foot unleashed a terrifying power that was as strong as an ancient sacred mountain. He stomped the heaven-devouring demon master's head into the ground. The heaven-devouring demon master was sprawled on the ground like a dead dog. Are you convinced? Yi Xian said softly. Unfortunately, half of the heaven-devouring demon master's head was buried in the ground. It was impossible for him to answer Yi Xian. Are you still not convinced? Bang! In the next moment, Yi Xian stomped on the ground with his right foot, crushing the heaven-devouring demon master's head on the spot. Fresh blood spurted out from his foot. Such a scene caused Yi Qingmei and the others to stare blankly at each other. They were unable to recover from their shock for a long time, and the three disciples looked at Yi Xian with eyes filled with extreme reverence. Master is mighty! The three disciples knelt down and kowtowed in shock. Even the elders and disciples of the extreme demonic shrine followed suit. The sound of cheering continued. At this moment, Yi Xian was invincible. He suppressed the taboo character to the point that he could not even lift his head. Who else could have such power? Chapter 1827. Terrifying. Too terrifying. It was terrifying to the extreme. An invincible taboo character in the primal chaos was actually trampled on by Yi Xian like a dead dog. He didn't have the slightest ability to resist. Yi Xian's terror was already indescribable. Trying to escape? Do you think you can escape? Chi. Yi Xian stepped on the head of the heaven-devouring demon lord and crushed it. The divine soul escaped and turned into a terrifying death ray, escaping into the distance. Unfortunately, those who Yi Xian wanted to kill would die without a doubt. Very few could escape from his hands, and the heaven-devouring demon lord was no exception. The heaven-devouring demon lord wanted to escape. What a joke! Seal. Imprisoning the heavens with one finger, sealing the heavens and earth. Yi Xian pointed his finger, and the desolation chi flowed. The heavens and earth were instantly sealed. Come, reverse the universe and suppress the world. Yi Xian's 5 fingers rumbled as he stepped forward. The heaven-devouring demon lord's soul was instantly grabbed into his palm. That desolate aura sealed his soul, causing him to have no way to enter the heavens or the earth. What is your cultivation level? The divine soul of the heaven-devouring demon lord flickered in Yi Xian's palm in horror. He screamed in extreme fear, because the power displayed by Yi Xian had completely exceeded his understanding. All along, he had thought that taboo characters were the peak of power. As long as one stepped into the taboo realm, one would be truly invincible in the chaos. However, his worldview was now shattered. In front of Yi Xian, he was like an ant. He could only be trampled on by the other party, without any ability to resist. What do you think if I let you die without a complete corpse? Yi Xian held the divine soul of the heaven-devouring demon lord in his hand. His voice was calm. Only the headless corpse under his feet was shocking. No. I surrender. I surrender. The heaven-devouring demon lord was jolted awake. He had already turned into a taboo. This body was too important to him. If it was destroyed, how was he going to find another body that was compatible with him? Most importantly, his life was already in Yi Xian's hands. With Yi Xian's current cultivation level that even he couldn't comprehend, it would be easy for Yi Xian to kill him. Are you afraid? Don't be afraid. You won't feel any pain. Watching your body being destroyed bit by bit, I think it's a great pleasure for you, right? Yi Xian smiled evilly. No. The heaven-devouring demon master screamed in horror. His spirit frantically tried to break free from Yi Xian's seal. However, with his little bit of spirit power, how could he break free? Bang bang bang. Yi Xian's lips curled into a cruel smile. He lifted his foot and stepped into the body of the heaven-devouring devil master. First, all 4 limbs were severed. The sound of bones shattering was extremely ear-piercing, and a large amount of blood and bones sprayed out, causing one's scalp to go numb. No! After the limbs were severed, Yi Xian turned his finger into a blade. Rays of sharp blade light shot out, and directly tore the body of the heaven-devouring devil master into pieces. Boom! Yi Xian slapped out with his palm, directly causing the heaven-devouring demon lord's tattered body to explode on the spot. It turned into a bloody mist that filled the sky and sprinkled down. Yi Xian, you son of a bitch! The heaven-devouring devil master roared with hatred. Although he hadn't experienced the pain of his physical body, seeing his own body being torn into pieces with his own eyes was incomprehensible to others. Are you insulting me? Yi Xian smiled. He looked at the heaven-devouring devil master's spirit with a sinister smile. It was extremely terrifying, and it woke the heaven-devouring devil master up instantly. An extremely bad feeling rose in his heart. Don't worry, I won't kill you so easily. I'll let you roast in the immemorial 3 calamity fire for eternity, and let you suffer the pain of never being reincarnated. What do you think of this suggestion? Yi Xian smiled cruelly. Although Yi Xian said it casually, the heaven-devouring devil master screamed in horror when he heard it. He could feel Yi Xian's viciousness and cruelty. Boom! Yi Xian flipped his hand, and the immemorial 3 calamity fire appeared. The tricolored halo was extremely beautiful, and it directly engulfed the heaven-devouring devil master's spirit. Let me go. I beg you no. The immemorial 3 calamity fire was extremely terrifying. Even forbidden figures didn't dare to touch it. At this moment, it was roasting the heaven-devouring devil master's spirit. The terrible pain was worse than death. Everyone has a reverse scale. If you touch it, you'll be enraged. If you dare to touch Yi Xian's people, you'll have to be prepared to suffer a fate worse than death. Yi Xian said indifferently. He casually threw out a jade talisman and sent the heaven-devouring devil master into it. He would be tortured in this jade talisman for eternity. Even if his spirit self-destructed, he wouldn't be able to free himself. Boom! After sealing the heaven-devouring devil master, Yi Xian's 5 fingers suddenly moved, and the heavenly core of chaos was forcefully taken into his pocket. Hang this jade talisman above the imperial palace. If there are any more enemies, activate this jade talisman, and it will turn into a crisis. Yi Xian casually tossed this item to Fatso Huang, and then strode towards the imperial palace. This made everyone quickly follow him. However, they all looked at Yi Xian with reverence. In the imperial palace, Yi Xian sat cross-legged in the void. Yi Qingmei accompanied him on one side. Fatso Huang and Gu Beichen guarded him on the left and right. Below them were the 3 main disciples and many elders and disciples who bowed to him on both sides. Welcome back, Emperor. Yi Xian was the best at flattery. He hurriedly knelt down and kowtowed to Yi Xian. The others naturally followed suit. The entire imperial palace was filled with cheers and applause. Get up. Yi Xian didn't like these empty formalities, and naturally didn't want to waste time on them. After all, he came back this time just to give some instructions to everyone. Guilty slave Li Taichu requests to see master. Suddenly, a voice came from outside the imperial palace. Come in. Fatso Huang shouted. Soon 2 figures entered together. They were Li Taichu and Jun Wushuang, who had inherited the position of Undead Heaven Lord. The 2 of them quickly knelt down as soon as they entered the imperial palace. Li Taichu in particular looked ashamed and worried. Since you're not dead, let bygones be bygones. At Yi Xian's level, he didn't care about Li Taichu's past trifles. Instead, he let Li Taichu sit on both sides, which was a way of accepting him again. Master, I've changed the name of the Extreme Devil Shrine to Zongtian Palace. You're still the former emperor of Zongtian Palace. We're willing to follow you for life. Yi Xian flattered. Master, Hongling and I have added 2 orthodoxies to Zongtian Palace. From now on, the 3 orthodoxies will be united and will listen to your orders. Yi Fengtian bowed. Master, my undead heaven hall will also join Zongtian Palace. From now on, we'll be at your beck and call. We'll never betray you. Li Taichu hurriedly expressed his loyalty. I created Zongtian Palace on a whim back then. Since you're willing to rebuild it, I won't say anything. However, you can choose someone else to be the emperor. Yi Xian said calmly. Master, other than you, who else is qualified to be the emperor? Yi Xian hurriedly asked. Chapter 1828. Everyone's eyes were filled with hope. In everyone's mind, Yi Xian was the only one worthy of being the emperor. No one else was qualified. However, Yi Xian rejected this suggestion, causing everyone to be at a loss. The entire imperial palace began to discuss spiritedly. Yi Xian's decision would not change. Everyone already knew Yi Xian's temperament, so no one tried to persuade him otherwise. However, the choice of the emperor became a big problem. After all, a snake could not do without a head. With the unification of several ultimate orthodoxies, there must be a leader. This was a big deal. I suggest Yi Xian Mo be the emperor. The elders of the extreme demonic shrine suggested to Yi Xian. After all, Yi Xian Mo was their heaven master. If Yi Xian Mo became the emperor, they would naturally rise as well. Yi Xian Mo did not say anything. At such a critical moment, he naturally had to remain silent. It was impossible for him to be humble, because he really did have the heart to be the emperor. It should be known that the unification of several ultimate orthodoxies was not an exaggeration to call it the number 1 orthodoxy in all of eternity. If he could become the emperor, he would be the number 1 in the chaotic universe. Even the other ultimate existences would have to bow before him. As for his master Yi Xian, he was always wandering outside. No one knew how long it would take for him to be seen. He would not be involved in the matters of the burial heaven palace. Moreover, with Yi Xian as his backer, even the so-called taboo figures would have to retreat. If he were to become the emperor lord, then it would be a great fortune. Disciple believes that Feng Tian is the one who has achieved the Tao in this world. Feng Tian is the most suitable person to take over the position of the emperor. Wan Hongling took a step forward, bowed towards Yi Xian and said, That's right. In terms of cultivation and temperament, we also think Feng Tian Lord is the most suitable to take over the emperor's position. Moreover, Feng Tian Lord is your disciple. No one is more qualified than him. Many elders and disciples of the sacred palace of life also knelt and bowed. I don't agree. Although both of them are your disciples, the position of emperor should belong to Extreme Love God. Jun Wushuang disagreed. Jun Wushuang's words immediately turned the long silence into silence. In terms of status, Yi Qingmei and Yi Xian were husband and wife. Although the two of them were not husband and wife in reality, they were husband and wife in name. When Jun Wushuang said this, everyone wanted to refute, but because of Yi Qingmei's status, they didn't dare to say anything. Like you, I have no intention of taking over the position of emperor. It's better to find someone else. Yi Qingmei shook her head and refused. Master, this disciple is not talented. Although my skills are not good, I believe that I have the ability to take over the position of the emperor. At this moment, modesty was a foolish thing to do. Yi Xuanma got down on one knee, showing a confident look. Master, I had no intention of becoming the imperial emperor. It's just that senior brother Xianmo likes to kill. If I were to become the imperial emperor, I would definitely benefit the 5 regions of chaos. Yi Fengtian bowed at the same time. It was obvious that both of them were determined to get the position of emperor. As for the others, they were naturally not qualified to compete for the position of emperor. After all, cultivation was a very important factor. Although Li Taichu was qualified, and he was also the new undead heaven lord, what happened before made it impossible for him to become the emperor. For a moment, the entire imperial palace was in a mess. It was divided into two major factions. One side supported Yi Xuanma, and the other supported Yi Fengtian. Both sides argued with each other as noisy as a market. Quiet. Suddenly Yi Xian frowned, causing the entire bustling imperial palace to fall silent. No one dared to quarrel anymore. Beichen Fatso Huang, what do you two think? I'd like to hear it. Yi Xian looked at the two and said. As Yi Xian's words fell, everyone immediately turned their attention to Fatso Huang and Gu Beichen. Everyone knew that the two were Yi Xian's trusted aides. Although their cultivation was only half a step away from the omnipotent realm, in Yi Xian's eyes, these two were more trustworthy than his disciples. When Yi Xian asked for their opinions, Fatso Huang and Gu Beichen were stunned. After all, the two of them did not want to participate in this kind of thing. After all, choosing one side would offend the other side. However, since Yi Xian asked, the two of them naturally had to answer. After all, the two of them were Yi Xian's master and servant, and they were also brothers. Naturally, they had to share Yi Xian's worries. Cough. Fatty Huang coughed lightly. After pondering for a moment, he said, Mister, if you let me choose, I feel that Xian Mo is more suitable. Although he walks on the demonic Tao, he is able to bend and stretch as needed. Furthermore, his methods are swift and fierce. He should be the most suitable candidate. Thank you for your praise, Uncle Master Huang. Xian Mo doesn't deserve such praise. Yi Xian Mo was overjoyed. He hurriedly bowed to Fatso Huang. He was extremely grateful to Fatso Huang in his heart. Beichen, what about you? Yi Xian looked at Gu Beichen again, seeking his opinion. Gu Beichen pondered for a while and finally said, According to Beichen's personal opinion, Fengtian has a mellow temperament and cares about all living beings. He doesn't like to kill. The position of emperor should belong to him. However, Gu Beichen paused for a while, then bowed to Yi Xian and said, However, Fengtian's methods are slightly weak. As an emperor, he should be decisive in killing. The most suitable candidate is still Xian Mo. Thank you for your guidance, Uncle Master Beichen. Yi Xian Mo was overjoyed. He was originally at the bottom of the valley. He didn't expect that Gu Beichen would choose to support him. On the other side, Yi Fengtian sighed helplessly. Actually, he didn't want to fight for the position of emperor. He only did it under one Hongling's instructions. Now that Fatso Huang and Gu Beichen had both recommended Yi Xian Mo, he naturally wouldn't fight for it. Master, I won't let you down. I won't dare to forget your teachings. Yi Xian Mo hurriedly knelt on the ground and kowtowed to Yi Xian as he promised. At this moment, it could be said that the outcome was set. No one said anything because Fatso Huang and Gu Beichen had both recommended Yi Xian Mo. It could be said that this matter was set in stone. However, Yi Xian didn't agree. He took a deep look at Yi Xian Mo, who was kneeling on the ground. He gently knocked on the armrest of the emperor's throne with his 5 fingers, making rhythmic knocking sounds. This made everyone anxiously wait for the final result. Qingmei, what do you think? Finally, Yi Xian spoke. However, he hadn't decided on the candidate for emperor. Instead, he looked at Yi Qingmei and asked for her opinion. Yi Qingmei's eyes moved slightly. She felt that Yi Xian's words had other intentions. This made her think carefully. After all, Yi Xian Mo had everyone's support now. There was absolutely no need for Yi Xian to ask for her opinion. However, Yi Xian still asked. Obviously, the candidate that Yi Xian liked for emperor wasn't Yi Xian Mo. However, if it wasn't Yi Xian Mo, then who could it be? Yi Qingmei didn't answer. Instead, she started to think. This also made Yi Xian Mo, who was kneeling on the ground, change his expression slightly. He suddenly had a bad feeling. Could it be them? Suddenly, Yi Qingmei's eyes widened in shock. From the corner of her eyes, she saw Fatso Huang and Gu Beichen. I, Yi Xian, rose from the human world, and the two of you have followed me loyally. From small mortals to the current chaos, you have been at my beck and call, risking your lives for me. Just this alone is more than any merit. Now I have already stood at the peak of the chaos, and there is no one in the entire universe who can match me. Although the three of us are master and servant, we are actually no different from brothers. If the two of you are not qualified to be Imperial Emperor, then who is? When a man achieves the Tao, even his chickens and dogs will ascend to heaven. The position of Imperial Emperor is what the two of you deserve. This is also the compensation I owe the two of you for all these years. Who dares to object? Following Yi Xian's words, everyone in Jintian Palace fell to their knees. Who would dare to object? Even Yi Xian Mo, who was jumping with excitement, was now trembling and kneeling on the ground. Although his eyes were filled with unwillingness, he did not dare to show any dissatisfaction. At this moment, everyone could see that Yi Xian already had candidates for the position of Imperial Emperor. They were Fatso Huang and Gu Beichen. Sir, you can't do this. It's not that Beichen and I are humble, but our cultivation levels are not as high as everyone else's. Just this point alone is not enough to convince everyone. How can a half-step omnipotent lead an omnipotent? Fatso Huang quickly dissuaded. Yes, sir. Moreover, there can't be two suns in the sky, and there can't be two emperors in a country. There can only be one imperial emperor. Even if you want the two of us to take charge of Jintian Palace, it doesn't make sense. Gu Beichen also quickly rejected. Cultivation levels are not a problem. Yi Xian smiled faintly. With a flip of his hand, two heavenly hearts of chaos appeared, flashing in his palm. Heavenly hearts of chaos. Everyone was in an uproar as they looked at Yi Xian in astonishment. These two heavenly hearts of chaos belonged to the Master of Destiny and the sky-devouring Demon Master. Clearly, Yi Xian wanted to let Fatso Huang and Gu Beichen inherit the two omnipotent positions. However, in the next moment a question appeared. Anyone who had stepped into the half-step omnipotent realm had lost the opportunity to become an omnipotent. At this moment, Fatso Huang and Gu Beichen had been half-step omnipotent realm experts for many years. How could they inherit the position of omnipotent? One must know that this was the iron law of chaos. No one could break it. However, before anyone could react, Yi Xian smiled faintly and waved his hand, sending the two heavenly hearts of chaos into Fatso Huang and Gu Beichen's bodies. Rumble! The power of destiny and the power of devouring exploded from the two of them. A painful roar came from their mouths. At the same time, the sky changed color. Wind blew and clouds surged. Boundless tribulation clouds gradually gathered in the sky. An extremely terrifying chaotic intent was slowly descending. Clearly, allowing two half-step omnipotent realm experts to attain Tao had already violated the laws of the chaotic universe. It was something that could not be allowed. Scram! Roar! With a roar that shattered the universe and exploded the primal chaos, Yi Xian let out an explosive roar. The rumbling sound of thunder pierced through the heavens and the earth, and the primal chaos tribulation clouds that had yet to condense actually dissipated along with his explosive roar. The descent of the primal chaos will that caused everyone's souls to tremble also quietly retreated. One roar shattered the chaos, and one rage dominated the world. Yi Xian's might was unparalleled. Even the chaotic universe did not dare to send down a calamity. Even its intent had to retreat. It was so terrifying that even the heavens and earth feared it. Such a scene made everyone's hearts palpitate. Their bodies and minds trembled uncontrollably. They looked at Yi Xian with reverence that they had never seen before. What was a heaven-defying expert? At this moment, Yi Xian displayed it vividly. It made everyone respect him to the extreme. Tao attainment. Yi Xian pointed a finger at Fatso Huang and Gu Beichen, perfectly fusing the two heavenly hearts of chaos into their bodies. As two supreme powers erupted from the top of their heads, two new omnipotent realm experts were born. Thank you, sir. Fatso Huang and Gu Beichen felt the power in their bodies. The power of destiny and the power of devouring were constantly revolving around them. A powerful feeling that they had never felt before was born in their hearts. The two of them had never dreamed that they would become omnipotent realm experts one day. This was simply an unattainable dream. Who would have thought that the day would come when they would become omnipotent realm experts? No need to thank me. This is what you deserve. Yi Xian smiled. From the human realm to the primal chaos universe, the two of them had been loyal and selfless. Yi Xian had been busy with his own cultivation and hadn't helped the two of them much. Now that he'd broken through to the heaven-defying realm, he should compensate the two of them. This was also Yi Xian's true thought. The two of us dare not accept Sir's kindness. If it weren't for Sir, Beichen and I would have died of old age long ago. Actually, Sir has never owed us anything. On the contrary, we owe Sir. Fatso Huang's eyes were misty. Clearly, he found it difficult to calm down. Thinking of all the things that had happened over the endless years, he was really glad that he had met Yi Xian. You're such a mischievous guy, yet you're still being pretentious. Yi Xian patted Fatso Huang's shoulder jokingly. This made everyone look at them enviously. After all, they did not have such treatment. They trembled in fear when facing Yi Xian. Only Fatso Huang and Gu Beichen could be so close to Yi Xian. Chapter 1830. Now that they had the cultivation, Fatso Huang and Gu Beichen had both become ultimate experts. They would not lose to anyone. Moreover, the two of them had inherited the power of fate and devouring. Even among the ultimate experts, they were among the best. Sir, do you really want Beichen and me to take over the position of Celestial Emperor? Fatso Huang was slightly troubled. Yi Xian could tell what Fatso Huang was thinking at a glance. After all, Fatso Huang had followed him for so many years. How could he not know what he was thinking? As the saying went, there can't be two suns in the sky and two emperors in a country. Two celestial emperors was something that had never happened before. However, in Yi Xian's opinion, Fatso Huang and Gu Beichen had experienced so many things together. They would definitely not hate each other because of the power in their hands. Didn't the ancient demon race also have two celestial emperors in charge of the celestial court in the past? The Eastern Emperor Tai and the Celestial Emperor are as close as brothers. Therefore, I hope that the two of you can take over the palace together. Yi Xian looked at the two solemnly. That's right. Since Sir values the two of you should not refuse. Yi Qingmei interrupted at the right time. Sir Beichen and I will definitely not disappoint you. Finally, Fatso Huang and Gu Beichen agreed. They even bowed 3 times to Yi Xian, but Yi Xian helped them up. With the two of you overseeing the palace, I can rest assured. This long journey will be without any worries. As Yi Xian spoke up to hear, he patted the two of them on the shoulders and gave them a look that only they understood. Nothing was in his words. Who could Yi Xian trust? There were very few people in the entire chaotic universe. According to Yi Xian's maxim, he did not trust anyone at all. However, after countless years, Yi Xian had stumbled along the way. Fatso Huang and Gu Beichen were already worthy of his trust, because time had proven too many things. Therefore, Yi Xian's evaluation of the two could be described in 8 words. Never leaving, never abandoning, and unwavering loyalty. From today onwards, Fatso Huang and Gu Beichen will be in charge of Zongtian Palace. Seeing them is like seeing me. If anyone dares to go against their will, it will be the same as going against the will of Yi Xian. Rumble. Yi Xian rolled up his sleeves and 2 dazzling emperor's thrones appeared. He pushed Fatso Huang and Gu Beichen onto them, making them sit uncomfortably on them. Greetings, Emperor. The outcome had been decided. Who would dare to oppose Yi Xian's decision? Under the lead of the 3 great disciples, everyone paid their respects to the new emperor. This caused Yi Xian to nod his head in satisfaction. Of course, Yi Xian knew that Yi Xian and the others would not be convinced. They might even be resentful. But what did that have to do with anything? As long as he was still alive, his disciples would not dare to eat breakfast. They could only obey his will. Taking a step back, even if he really did fall one day, with Fatty Huang Beichen's cultivation, he would be able to contend with those who were unconvinced. Furthermore, Yi Qingmei would not sit idly by. What happened next was simple. The few strongest paths merged into Zongtian Palace. Naturally, they would start assigning positions. Yi Xian had already prepared for this. From cultivation to contributions, one deity position after another was conferred upon them. Yi Qingmei was in strongest and Yi Xian's wife in name. She was known as the Divine Mother in Zongtian Palace. In the outside world, she still used the title of Extreme Love Master. The three disciples were all emperors. After all, emperors were above emperors. This title was reasonable. To outsiders, they were still the strongest paths. Take Jun Wushuang and Li Taichu for example. Although Li Taichu was also an ultimate expert, he was just like Jun Wushuang. Li Taichu did not dare to have any complaints. After all, it was already a great grace for him to be able to survive. The rest of the people also received their respective deity positions, according to their cultivation and contributions. However, when it was Yuan Ling and Luo Ho's turn, things became a little difficult. However, Yi Xian was already prepared. Master, if you did not guide me into the path, I, Yi Xian, would not be here today. Therefore, the position of imperial tutor is reserved for you. Yi Xian presented a golden jade talisman with both hands. The words imperial tutor were engraved on the jade talisman. Yi Xian bowed as a master and disciple. Yi Xian's bow was not important. The others had to bow even more. Even Fatso Huang and Gu Beichen, who had just become emperors, walked down from their thrones to greet Yuan Ling. Good. Yuan Ling was crying tears of joy. He trembled as he received the imperial tutor's jade talisman. He finally saw the disciple he nurtured standing at the peak of the chaos. What else could make him prouder than this? The strongest bowed, the taboo bowed. He had never dared to imagine such a scene. However, Yi Xian really did it. To Yuan Ling, this was the greatest pride of his life. Even though his cultivation was weak, with such an invincible disciple in the chaos, who would dare to look down on him? We pay our respects to the imperial tutor. Everyone bowed and paid their respects. After all, even Yi Xian had to call him master. As disciples and disciples, they had to respect Yuan Ling even more. Good. Don't stand on ceremony. Quickly get up. Yuan Ling hurriedly asked everyone to get up. How could he not know that these people were so courteous to him because of Yi Xian? Fellow Taoist Luo Ho, I have a throne for you. Yi Xian turned to look at Luo Ho. However, before Yi Xian could finish, Luo Ho shook his head and smiled bitterly. Yi Daoyu, I've always regarded you as a goal to pursue. However, later on, I found that the distance between you and me was getting farther and farther. Now that you're standing at the peak, I finally understand that I won't be able to fight to my heart's content with you in this lifetime. It's time for me to find a place to live in seclusion. Luo Ho rejected Yi Xian's proposal. This made Yi Xian sigh in his heart. He knew that Luo Ho was lonely. Back in the great desolate world, the two of them had hated and fought each other, and they had even viewed each other as great enemies. However, after experiencing countless years, the gap between their cultivations was simply too great. It was no wonder that Rahu was disheartened. Moreover, Luo Ho was a proud person. How could he stay in such a mood? Everyone has their own aspirations. Since fellow Luo Ho wants to leave, I won't force you. However, you'll always be my friend. If there's something you can't solve, I won't sit idly by. Yi Xian said sincerely. Ha, don't worry. With a friend like you, even I, Luo Ho, can hold my head high in front of a taboo character. Luo Ho laughed loudly. He cupped his hands towards Yi Xian and bid farewell to the others. Then he rode a black cloud and drifted away. This old thing is still so proud. Seeing Luo Ho choose to live in seclusion, Yuan Ling, who had been with him for many years, felt somewhat reluctant to part with him. He could only sigh helplessly. After everything was settled, the next step was to set up a banquet. As everyone toasted each other, Yi Xian also had a rare moment of relaxation. When the banquet ended, Yi Xian told everyone that he would be going on a long trip. It was unknown how long this trip would take. Perhaps the next time they met would be a Yuanhui, but it was also possible that he would be able to meet everyone again before the 12th Yuanhui. Chapter 1831. Under the reluctant gazes of the crowd, Yi Xian left resolutely. Although he was now in the heaven-defying realm, and seemed to be invincible in the chaotic universe, there were still 7 peerless extremists above him. This was like a heavenly sword that could slash down on him at any time. Therefore, Yi Xian had to become even stronger, until he became an existence that could shock the heavens and earth, and even surpass the heavens and earth. Heaven and earth were black and yellow, and the universe was primitive. Primitive. These 2 words were a little vague. The meaning of the primordial world was that it was infinitely big and could contain anything. The primitive world. Yi Xian rushed into the chaotic universe from here. It was also the place where he grew up. It also laid the foundation for Yi Xian to enter the chaotic world and even dominate the entire chaotic universe. The sky was high and the clouds were light, and the spiritual qi was overwhelming. A little ripple grew in the sky, and Yi Xian's figure appeared quietly. It did not cause any fluctuation at all, as if he was just air. Looking at the familiar yet strange primitive world, Yi Xian took a deep breath. He felt as if he had returned to the era when he fought with the sages. Here were his old friends buried in the yellow earth, his loved ones who died for him, the women he killed with his own hands, and the bones of his enemies who fell at his feet along the way. Yang Jian, the Jade Emperor, Yu Ding Nuwa, and even the ancestral sorcerer saint. Enemies fell at his feet one by one, paving a Tongtian road for him to move forward. Yi Xian had never forgotten everything here. Even when he returned to his homeland, these memories surged. It was a pity that although the primitive world still existed, the people and things of the past no longer existed. Could this be considered Yi Xian's regret? In fact, Yi Xian returned here not to visit his homeland, because there was no one worth remembering here, because those people had passed away many years ago. He returned to the primitive world, just to find a person. The Eternal Shadow. With Yi Xian's current cultivation and perception of the Eternal Shadow's aura, unless he escaped from the chaotic universe, Yi Xian could find him even if he was at the end of the world. Wang. Yi Xian's figure vanished, and when he appeared once more, he was already standing in a desolate gorge. You still came. The aura of death was chaotic. With scarlet eyes, the ancient shadow stood beside the pool. Gai Tianyuan was by his side, but he looked at Yi Xian with a complicated expression. Brother Tianyuan, long time no see. Yi Xian was dressed in black, and there was no power radiating from his body. He cupped his hands and bowed to Gai Tianyuan like a mortal. Yi Dao, you flatter me. With your current cultivation base, I don't deserve to be called elder brother, Gai Tianyuan said bitterly. Yi Xian, what do you want? The ancient shadow's aura was cold and sharp. His scarlet eyes were extremely serious. He would never forget the terrifying scene in the ancient forbidden land. One finger. This guy had sent that legendary existence flying with a single finger, and even let him escape. The terror of that finger made his soul tremble. Although he felt that the finger wasn't Yi Xian's true cultivation base, his fear of Yi Xian had reached its highest point in history. Back then, you destroyed my heaven's gate and used me many times. Today, I'm naturally here to settle the karma between us, Yi Xian said indifferently. Yi Xian, don't think that I'm afraid of you just because you found some opportunities in the ancient forbidden land. That finger of yours must have relied on external power, right? The ancient shadow said sternly. Clearly, he was testing Yi Xian's strength. The power of the desolate heaven finger had left a deep impression on him. That's right. That finger was indeed not my cultivation base. Yi Xian nodded and admitted. As expected, the ancient shadow relaxed. He had already guessed that Yi Xian's cultivation base was inferior to the forbidden land. How could he use such a shocking move and even force you back? However, today, I'm here to settle the old score. If you obediently surrender, I won't have to waste time suppressing you. Yi Xian said calmly. Suppressing? The ancient shadow was stunned for a moment before he scolded coldly. With just you. Rumble. The 8 forbidden arts were activated, and a rumbling death ray shot into the sky. The terrifying power of the forbidden land was displayed. As a veteran forbidden land, The ancient shadow wasn't someone that the arrogant and ignorant heaven-devouring demon lord could compare to. You're really arrogant. How dare you come looking for me? Let's see who's suppressing who today. Boom. The 8 forbidden arts were extremely terrifying. The ancient shadow's move was extremely terrifying. The 8 forbidden arts directly suppressed Yi Xian. Master, don't. Gai Tianyuan was shocked. He wanted to dissuade the ancient shadow, but how could he? Rumble. The forbidden death ray that covered the sky swept toward Yi Xian. The 8 forbidden arts contained within it were too terrifying, causing one's heart to tremble to the extreme. Desolate heaven finger. Yi Xian raised a finger, and the terrifying scene from the ancient danger grounds reappeared. The giant finger that supported the heavens condensed, and the ancient shadow let out a low roar as it smashed down towards Yi Xian. Pung. One finger. It was just one finger. What forbidden power? What 8 forbidden arts? In front of this finger, they were all like paper. They were all reduced to ashes. Boom. The desolate heaven finger descended, and the ancient shadow was directly sent flying. His body was horribly split open, and large amounts of black blood flowed out continuously. The forbidden death ray that surrounded him collapsed. Unable to withstand a single blow. Completely unable to withstand a single blow. He didn't even have the strength to resist. Although this finger wasn't as powerful as the one that sent you flying, that was because Yi Xian wasn't a heaven-shocking forbidden land yet. However, although Yi Xian hadn't stepped into that realm, the desolate heaven finger he used at the heaven-shattering realm was extremely terrifying. This was also because Yi Xian had held back. If he wanted, this finger could have scattered the ancient shadow's soul and killed him. Come! Yi Xian's 5 fingers suddenly stretched out, and the ancient shadow, who had been smashed into the mountain range, was uncontrollably sucked toward him. Then, like a dead dog, he fell limply to the ground, as if he didn't even have the strength to stand up. Why is it like this? Pooh! The ancient shadow spat out a mouthful of blood. He crawled on the ground like a pile of mud, his hands clawing at the ground. He couldn't believe that he had been defeated by Yi Xian with a single blow. He clearly remembered that in the ancient forbidden land, Yi Xian's cultivation was far inferior to his. How could Yi Xian's cultivation have undergone such a terrifying change after experiencing the ancient forbidden land? All of a sudden, the ancient shadow was shocked. He raised his head to look at Yi Xian in shock. His voice trembled as he said, You really broke through the 12 heaven gates and stepped into the next realm? You want to know? Yi Xian looked down at the ancient shadow beneath his feet. His voice was extremely calm. Tell me. The ancient shadow roared again and again. He stared at Yi Xian with burning eyes, hoping that Yi Xian could give him an answer. Since you want to know, I can tell you. This realm is called the heaven-defying realm. However, only living people can enter this realm. As a mere dead person, you can only stay in this so-called forbidden realm for the rest of your life. Yi Xian said mercilessly. Aeon Shadow was already prepared to die, because he had lost all hope. A dead person who had lost all hope was nothing more than a walking corpse. It was only today that he understood what kind of existence he was. Yi Daoyu, have mercy. Gai Tianyuan suddenly dropped to his knees. He kowtowed to Yi Xian and begged. Master has already been defeated. With your current cultivation, killing him is as easy as a thought. Although Master used you, he didn't use any ruthless methods against you. In the past, he even taught you some forbidden arts. Please have mercy. Gai Tianyuan was completely loyal to Aeon Shadow. Without him, he would only be a remnant soul, and it would be impossible for him to transform into a half-step supreme existence. This was why he had risked his life to plead for mercy. You're pleading for him? Yi Xian slightly frowned, then lightly said, That's right. Back then, he did pass down 2 forbidden techniques to me. Among them, the inverse character technique even brought me back to life. However, I also gave him the Calamity Immortal transformation. This was only an exchange, so I don't owe him anything. Yi Xian paused for a moment, then said, However, Brother Tianyuan helped me kill him in the past. I owe you this favor. Today, if you plead for him, I can spare his life, but on one condition. Yi Daoyu, please speak. Gai Tianyuan was overjoyed. He didn't think that Yi Xian would really let Aeon Shadow live. Chapter 1833. I want him to be my slave forever, to protect Jintian Palace for me. If he agrees, I'll let him live, Yi Xian said. Impossible, Aeon Shadow roared. Although he wasn't a match for Yi Xian, he still had his pride. He couldn't accept becoming Yi Xian's slave and protecting Jintian Palace. Impossible. Yi Xian smiled faintly. He wasn't surprised at all. He raised his hand, and space-time became chaotic. His heaven-defying aura seeped out. Since it's impossible, you can just die. Yi Xian wasn't a kind person, nor was he a soft-hearted person. The fact that he could give the Eternal Shadow a chance to live was already a huge favor. Since the other party had chosen to refuse, then he might as well send him to his death. Boom! With one hand covering the sky, Yi Xian's palm smashed down towards the ancient shadow. That terrifying desolate aura was growing. This strike would definitely be able to destroy the ancient shadow's body and soul. Yi Daoyu, wait! Gai Tianyuan shouted anxiously, instantly appearing in front of Aeon Shadow. Yi Xian frowned, but he didn't attack. After all, he still owed Gai Tianyuan a favor. If he attacked, both of them would die. Brother Tianyuan, the reason why I didn't kill you with this attack is because we still have some friendship. If you continue to pester me, then don't blame me, Yi Xian, for being merciless. Yi Xian's voice turned cold. He'd already given Gai Tianyuan a lot of face, but he could only give face once. If Aeon Shadow didn't know what was good for him, Yi Xian would have no choice but to kill them all. Yi Daoyu, please give me an incense stick's worth of time. Just an incense stick's worth of time. After that, I'll give you a satisfactory answer. Gai Tianyuan knew what kind of person Yi Xian was, so he hurriedly gave his word. Then, he helped Aeoninger up and entered the omphalos. It was unknown how he would persuade Aeoninger. The time it took for an incense stick to burn passed quickly. Yi Xian naturally wouldn't be so insidious as to eavesdrop on what the other party was saying. Perhaps Yi Xian would have done this when he was weak, but now that his cultivation was strong enough to crush everything, he disdained such a sinister trick. The time for an incense stick to burn passed quickly. When Wang Guing and Gai Tianyuan walked out, Wang Guing looked dispirited. It was unknown what Gai Tianyuan had said to him. Yi Xian, I can agree to your request, but I can only promise you that I'll guard Berry Heaven Palace until the Chaos Verse is destroyed. Aeon Shadow was clearly humiliated. If no one can negotiate with me, then you can die in peace. Yi Xian's voice was cold. Negotiating with him was simply courting death. Wait, Aeon Shadow hurriedly said. I can tell you a great secret. It's worth it in exchange for my life. A secret? Yi Xian frowned. He'd inherited a memory fragment from Desolation, so he knew more about the eternal universe than these forbidden characters. What great secret could Aeon Shadow possibly have to tell him? However, Yi Xian still wanted to hear it. If Aeon Shadow's secret didn't satisfy him, he'd send him on his way. When Yi Xian didn't attack, Aeon Shadow and Gai Tianyuan sighed in relief. Do you still remember what I told you about the other name of the Year Wilds? Aeon Shadow asked. The other name? Yi Xian blinked, his eyes glazed over. He was clearly recalling some of the conversations he'd had with Aeon Shadow. The Genesis lands? Suddenly, Yi Xian's eyes moved. He finally remembered that when he was captured by the Eternal Shadow back to the Great Desolate World, the other party had mentioned these 4 words to him, calling this Great Desolate World the origin place. According to Aeon Shadow, Chaos Heavenly Punishment wouldn't descend in the Genesis lands. As a forbidden character, he could hide here. That was why he'd come here. What are you trying to say? Yi Xian's eyes flashed with surprise. I presume you've already guessed that the secret I'm about to tell you is about the Genesis lands. The Eternal Shadow slowly spoke, and also told Yi Xian a great secret about the Great Desolate World. This also caused Yi Xian to quietly listen. The Chaos Verse, the 12 periods. Ever since the end of the three great eras, every chaos verse was reconstructed into 12 periods. Each period was then divided into 289,300,000 years. Thus, a complete chaos verse was formed. However, when the 12 periods came to an end, the chaos verse would be destroyed and reincarnated. All living beings and objects would cease to exist. After the Great Calamity, the chaos verse would be reconstructed once more. This was also known as the Great Calamity. However, this so-called Great Samsara of the chaotic universe didn't include this place of origin, which was the great desolate world that Yi Xian knew of. No matter how many times the chaos verse was destroyed and reincarnated, the Genesis lands would remain unaffected. This was why Aeon Shadow referred to the Your Wilds as the Genesis lands. In his era, the chaos verse had been destroyed and reincarnated. Aeon Shadow had been able to survive not only because of his cultivation and his ability to hide in the river of time, but also because of the Genesis lands. There seemed to be a mysterious power protecting the Genesis lands. Even when the chaos verse was destroyed and reincarnated, the Genesis lands had never been affected. This was a secret that only Aeon Shadow knew. This was why he had been able to live for so long. Every time the chaos verse was destroyed and reincarnated, it wasn't just the paragons who would die. Even some ancient forbidden figures would suffer. The lucky ones would survive, but the unlucky ones would still die. The reason why Aeon Shadow had been able to survive for so long was because of the Genesis lands. After countless chaos verses had passed, Aeon Shadow would come to this place in order to search for the source of this mysterious power. Unfortunately, Aeon Shadow had come up empty-handed. Even though he had traversed the entire Genesis lands, he hadn't been able to find the source of this mysterious power. Today, in the face of Yi Xian's murderous intent, he had been prepared to die. However, under Gai Tianyuan's persuasion, he had chosen to live. After all, no one really wanted to die. Even if he died as a forbidden figure, he would still be alive. In truth, Aeon Shadow hadn't told Yi Xian this secret out of the goodness of his heart. In exchange, he didn't want to become Yi Xian's slave and be enslaved forever. Of course, Aeon Shadow had his own plans. He had been searching for the secrets of the Genesis lands, but hadn't been able to find them. Perhaps Yi Xian would be able to uncover them. If Yi Xian could uncover this secret, Aeon Shadow would be able to untie a knot in his heart. He would be giving Yi Xian a great opportunity and forming a good relationship with Yi Xian. Taking a step back, even if Yi Xian didn't find the source, it had nothing to do with him. If Yi Xian encountered danger and perished, Aeon Shadow couldn't be blamed. Chapter 1834. Yi Xian's eyes grew abnormally deep as Aeon Shadow approached. He could sense that Aeon Shadow wasn't lying to him. With his current cultivation and years of experience, Aeon Shadow couldn't possibly play any tricks on him. Aeon Shadow couldn't afford to pay such a price. Of course, Yi Xian had long since seen through Aeon Shadow's intentions. However, in the face of Yi Xian's absolute power, Yi Xian couldn't care less. Yi Xian was completely immersed in the land of Genesis, the Your Wilds he was so familiar with. After a good while, Yi Xian snapped out of his reverie and looked at Aeon Shadow. "Your secret does interest me. I can agree to your request." Yi Xian's words put Aeon Shadow and Gai Tianyuan at ease. "Remember, you must protect Sky-Burying Palace until the end of the Chaos Verse. If you dare play tricks behind my back, I'll let you know what it means to wish you were dead." Yi Xian vanished without a trace, as if he'd never been there in the first place. His ability to shift heaven and earth caused Aeon Shadow's heart to sink. "Master, it's time to face reality." Gai Tianyuan sighed, hoping that Aeon Shadow would pull himself together. Aeon Shadow chuckled self-deprecatingly. "I should have guessed that he's the ultimate. If I'd known, I wouldn't have schemed against him in the first place. Now I'm in this state. But Tianyuan, if it weren't for you, I'd be dead by now. If you're willing, we'll no longer be master and servant. I'd like to accept you as my personal disciple. What do you think?" "Esteemed master, disciple Gai Tianyuan kowtows to you." Gai Tianyuan knelt down and kowtowed, causing Aeon's shadow to nod in agreement. However, the loneliness in his eyes didn't fade away. In truth, he'd chosen to live mostly because of Gai Tianyuan. He'd lived long enough. When he learned of the difference between him and Yi Xian, he'd lost all hope. All he wanted to do was pass on his combat arts to Gai Tianyuan. The primordial world. Yi Xian sat cross-legged on top of the dome, his eyes slightly closed as he calmly sensed everything in the primeval world. Whether it was the changes in spiritual energy or the birth of laws, nothing could escape his detection. 7 days later, Yi Xian slowly opened his eyes. A trace of doubt flashed through his eyes, because he did not sense any abnormalities in the untainted world. Apart from the fact that the spiritual energy here was slightly thinner than that of the chaotic universe, there was nothing special about it, let alone any so-called mysterious power. Did he lie to me? Yi Xian's eyes turned cold. However, in the next moment, Yi Xian overturned his thoughts. After all, Aeon Shadow wouldn't dare do such a thing. Aeon Shadow knew better than anyone the consequences of deceiving him. However, Yi Xian had sensed almost every inch of the great desolate world several times. He could not have missed even a single grain of sand. To put it bluntly, with Yi Xian's current cultivation base and state, he could find out everything in this tiny primitive world with only one thought. No, there had to be something wrong. Yi Xian's eyes were deep. His intuition told him that he had missed something, or that he was searching in the wrong direction. In terms of cultivation, Aeon Shadow was no match for him, but he was a taboo character. Given his cultivation base, he could explore the great desolate world in the blink of an eye. Even he had searched for countless years without discovering the source of this mysterious power. This proved that this mysterious power was hidden extremely deeply. If the great desolate world could exist even after the great destruction of the chaotic universe, how could this mysterious power be so easily discovered? Yi Xian no longer sensed the great desolate world. Instead, he frowned in thought. Even if he continued to sense the great desolate world, he would only be wasting time. To be able to exist for so long after the great samsara of the primeval chaos means that this power does not fear the great samsara of the chaotic universe. Then this power is... Yi Xian was muttering to himself. When he said that, his eyes suddenly froze because he'd finally thought of a possibility. Someone who can shock the heavens and destroy the earth? Yi Xian murmured in shock as his train of thought suddenly became clear. If there were people that even the great samsara of the chaotic universe couldn't destroy, then it had to be a small group of people who could shock the heavens and destroy the earth. Since the great desolate world could exist for so long, could it be that there were people who could shock the heavens and destroy the earth? And this was the so-called mysterious power. When Yi Xian thought of this, all the hairs on his body stood on end. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that this was a possibility. It was also at this moment that Yi Xian thought of something extremely astonishing. He and Lu Bai. That's right. It was him and Lu Bai. Yi Xian had been born in the mortal world, and so had Lu Bai. The two of them had met in the mortal world, and it was only later that they had come to the great desolate world, and then the chaotic universe. In his previous life, he had been Famine, known as the #1 expert of the primordial era. In his previous life, Lu Bai had been Gu Taichu, known as the #1 expert of the primeval era. These two people were a small group of people who could shock the heavens and destroy the earth. But why did they appear in the mortal world when they were born? Neither Yi Xian nor Lu Bai had been born in the great desolate world, nor anywhere in the chaotic universe. Why were they born in the mortal world? The mortal world? It's actually the mortal world. Suddenly, when Yi Xian thought of this, he was horrified. He had actually forgotten his homeland. But a guest that made his heart tremble also appeared. If there was a person who could shock the heavens and destroy the earth hidden in the mortal world, then had he been known by this person all along the way? Hiss! Yi Xian was terrified when he thought about it. He even sucked in a breath of cold air, and beads of sweat faintly appeared on his forehead. When he was a teenager, he suffered from a terminal illness and met Yuan Ling on Heartbreak Mountain. Step by step, He had come to where he was today. There was a person who could shock the heavens and destroy the earth watching him. But he did not know who this person was. Yi Xian's scalp went numb, and all the hair on his body stood on end. He had risen from the mortal world and stepped onto the peak of the universe step by step. But the true terror was actually hidden in the mortal world. The firmament froze, and the void came to a standstill. Yi Xian's expression was extremely heavy. He could already conclude that the mysterious power that the eternal shadow spoke of was definitely a person who could shock the heavens and destroy the earth. And this person was definitely hiding in the mortal world. Yi Xian slowly exhaled a turbid breath. He quickly calmed himself down. He could not let this matter affect his temperament. A person who could shock the heavens and destroy the earth. The eternal universe had only produced 8 people. Now 3 of them were known. As for the remaining 5, Yi Xian knew 2 of them according to Desolation's inherited memories. Even he did not know the details of the other 3, because he had only inherited 1 memory from Desolation, and Desolation had left behind 3 memories. Yi Xian's memories were not complete, only 1/3 of them. As for who these 3 people were, Yi Xian had no idea. Chapter 1835. Yi Xian gradually calmed down, but he was still hesitant. He didn't know if he should go to the human world to investigate. Although the heaven-defying realm was terrifying, the heaven-shocking danger zone was even more terrifying. They were truly existences that could be said to be eternal and indestructible. If he rashly went to the human world, he would most likely encounter great danger. To go or not to go? A difficult question was placed in front of Yi Xian. However, Yi Xian didn't hesitate for too long. His gaze became firm, and he made a decision in his heart. Go. Although the heaven-shocking danger zone was terrifying, he still had some confidence. After all, he was Desolation in his previous life. Even prison was extremely apprehensive, and didn't dare to truly kill him. What he feared was the reappearance of his previous life. According to this inference, the heaven-shocking danger zone hidden in the human world most likely had the same idea as prison. However, Yi Xian knew very well that Desolation had already disappeared, and definitely wouldn't appear again. Perhaps Yi Xian's soul hid some of Desolation's power, but this was just a bluff. Previously, when he scared off prison in the ancient danger zone, it was only because he inherited a part of Desolation's memory that he drew on the power left behind by Desolation. Boom! Finally, Yi Xian stood up from the clouds. No matter what, he had to go to the human world to see what this heaven-shocking danger zone expert wanted to do. Moreover, Yi Xian faintly guessed that not every heaven-shocking danger zone expert was his enemy. Perhaps this person was his friend? Of course, this was only Yi Xian's inference. Whether this person was a friend or a foe, Yi Xian himself couldn't predict it. However, he and Lu Bai were both born in the human world, and this heaven-shocking danger zone expert was hiding in the human world. From this point, even if this person wasn't a friend, he shouldn't be an enemy. Wang. Heaven and earth shifted so close yet so far. Yi Xian took a step and disappeared without a trace. When he reappeared, he was already at the foot of a Tongtian divine mountain. Mount Buzhou. 33 levels of celestial palaces surrounded Mount Buzhou. From time to time, immortal soldiers and generals could be seen patrolling the skies. Those palaces were emitting immortal light. This was where the celestial court was located. Looking at the scene before him, Yi Xian had some nostalgia in his eyes. He had once been the master of the celestial court, and had even led the entire celestial court to dominate the Chaos 3 realms. Even saints had been killed mercilessly. However, when he returned to this place again, whether it was the primordial world or the heavenly court in front of him, everything had changed. The celestial court was still the celestial court, but there was no one Yi Xian was familiar with. After so many years, there was no one he knew in the celestial court. Even Sky King, who was sitting in Sky King Palace, was just a stranger. Yi Xian did not come here to revisit the old place. He had condensed the human realm in order to prevent people from entering it. When he went to the chaotic world, he left the condensed human realm in Sky King Palace. This time, he naturally wanted to take back the human realm and enter it. Yi Xian calmed his thoughts. With a thought, he appeared in the Heavenly Emperor Palace. Sky King Palace. This was Yi Xian's former Taoist rite. Now it had changed greatly. On the emperor's throne, a young man in an emperor's robe was reading jade slips. Obviously, he was the current Sky King. Yi Xian could tell at a glance that this little guy was just a great sage. However, to be able to cultivate to this level in the untainted world, this proved that this little guy was extremely talented. Pop! Like ripples on water, ripples bloomed in the void. Yi Xian's figure also appeared. Yi Xian's sudden appearance changed the expression of the young man on the emperor's throne. His great sage cultivation suddenly burst out, and his eyes instantly looked sharply at Yi Xian. Who are you? How dare you trespass in the celestial court? It had to be said that even though this young man was only a great sage, he had been a celestial emperor for a long time. So his temperament could be considered quite stable, and he didn't panic. This is my Taoist rite. How can I trespass? Yi Xian smiled and strolled toward the young man. How dare you? I am the Supreme Emperor of Jade Heaven, who has ruled the untainted land for 380 million years. Who are you? How dare you speak so arrogantly? Boom! The young man shouted majestically. His great sage cultivation burst out, and his palm was aimed at Yi Xian. Little guy, you're still a little hot-tempered. In the face of this attack, Yi Xian did not even bother to release his cultivation. He continued to stroll toward the young man. Just the aura on his body was enough to stop time and space in the Celestial Emperor Palace. The young man's attack dissipated before it could be launched, and he was rooted to the spot. You. Such a strange and terrifying scene instantly caused the little fellow to panic. He looked at Yi Xian in astonishment, as an extreme fear appeared in his heart. Terrifying. Too terrifying. He felt as if he was not facing a human, but an eternal blue sky. With just a thought, the other party could make his soul disappear. Who was he? Where did he come from? A large amount of cold sweat drenched his back, and bean-sized beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. He couldn't move his body, and even the surrounding spiritual energy was still. This kind of terror made him extremely frightened. He had never seen such a powerful person. Even his ancestor did not give him such a terrifying feeling. No. After 10 breaths, he was startled, as though he had just thought of something extremely shocking. Yi Tiandi. He's the legendary Yi Tiandi? Boom. Kong Fan was horrified. In an instant, he turned into a ray of holy light and disappeared. When he reappeared, there was a mottled yellow scroll in his hand. As he unfolded the scroll tremblingly, a black-robed young man with a cold face appeared. He looked exactly the same as the person who had just appeared. Yi Tiandi, he's really Yi Tiandi? Thump! Kong Fan trembled and cried out in alarm. His entire body went limp on the ground, proving how shocked he was. It wasn't until an hour later that he calmed down. He hurriedly sent out a celestial emperor's decree. 81 bells rang throughout the celestial court, spreading throughout the entire eldritch world. Chapter 1836. On the other side, Yi Xian naturally didn't know that his appearance had caused a stir in the entire wilderness celestial court. Even if he knew, he wouldn't have reacted in the slightest. After all, things had changed in the wilderness. It didn't matter if he met a few old friends or not. What was truly important was what he had to do. He was now in the late stages of the 11th Yuan Hui. In less than 200 million years, he would enter the 12th Yuan Hui, which was also the end of the chaotic universe. When the chaotic universe reached its end, it would experience a great samsara of destruction. Yi Xian had to step into the great danger realm before that time came. The wilderness, the extreme north. A black sphere floated in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian's eyes were deep and dark, because this sphere was the human world he had condensed. Countless years had passed. Yi Xian didn't know what the human world had become because he hadn't returned to his homeland for a very, very long time. If he hadn't deduced that there was a great danger realm expert in the human world, perhaps Yi Xian wouldn't have returned to the human world. This was because there was no longer anyone or anything he was reluctant to leave in his homeland. Open. With a thought, Yi Xian caused the black sphere to ripple in the void before transforming into a door that appeared in front of Yi Xian. A long-lost aura assaulted him. This aura was very familiar to Yi Xian. It was the unique aura of the human world. It also made Yi Xian's eyes somewhat dazed as memories from long ago surged into his mind. That why Yi Xian slowly exhaled a mouthful of turbid air as his mind gradually calmed down. This trip to the human world could be considered as returning to his homeland, causing Yi Xian to sigh with emotion. However, his final goal was to find that heaven-shaking absolute land. Finally, Yi Xian no longer hesitated. He strode through the door and disappeared from the outside world. The human world. Rather than calling it a world, it was more accurate to call it an aqua-blue planet. Its area was just a drop in the ocean compared to the wilderness, let alone the chaotic universe. Wang. As soon as Yi Xian appeared here, the overwhelming aura of the mortal world swept towards him, which immediately made Yi Xian frown. Ever since he left the human world, he had broken the seal between the human world and the untainted world, allowing spiritual energy to reappear in the human world. However, the spiritual qi in the human realm was too thin. This was truly a low-dimensional space. Being able to cultivate to the immortal realm was already the limit. Rumble. Just as Yi Xian was about to examine the current human world, a rumbling sound came from the distant sky. A plane flew through the clouds and brushed past Yi Xian. A plane. Looking at the strange yet familiar things, Yi Xian's eyes were filled with surprise. After all, he had been away from the human world for so long that he could barely remember such a technologically advanced means of transportation. However, Yi Xian was a little curious. Logically speaking, the human world had experienced endless years. Whether it was technology or cultivation, it should have undergone earth-shaking changes. Why was it not much different from when he had left? Yi Xian's mind moved, and the entire human world appeared in his mind. Yi Xian saw many familiar sceneries. There were many high-rise buildings in the bustling metropolis. The streets were crowded with cars honking their horns. There were also many men and women in fashionable clothes shopping. There were huge ships sailing on the sea, and planes whistling in the sky. The entire human world was full of technology. Yi Xian felt like he had returned to the past. The most interesting thing was that other than the metropolis that was filled with technology, Yi Xian also saw many cultivators. There were even immortal-level existences that were lecturing on the Tao in some mountains that were filled with spiritual energy. Technology and cultivation went hand in hand. This was something that Yi Xian did not expect. However, it made sense when he thought about it. With the existence of spiritual qi in the human world, it would naturally produce cultivators and immortals. This was all reasonable. Qi. With a thought from Yi Xian, he instantly appeared in a bustling area of a large city. With a shake of his body, the ancient costume on his body instantly disappeared. He had already changed into a decent set of casual clothes, and even the silver-white hair that hung behind his head had become simple and jet black. He looked exactly like an urban youth. Needless to say, at this moment, Yi Xian really did look a bit like he did in the human world. However, after countless years had passed, his temperament had long since changed. Even though he'd returned to his original state, he still attracted the attention of mortals. Little brother, may I ask how to get to the place in your mind? It was summer at this time. 3 freshly dressed girls came to Yi Xian's side and laughed. One of the girls, who was slightly dressed like a loli, smiled and struck up a conversation with Yi Xian. Yi Xian was stunned and speechless. He did not know how to answer. Obviously, the concept of communicating with mortals had been forgotten by Yi Xian. Little brother, you're so handsome. Can you add some prestige? Another young and beautiful girl stood on tiptoe and smiled playfully at Yi Xian. She even waved the phone in her hand. Looking at Yi Xian's dazed look, the 3 girls immediately covered their mouths and laughed. One of the girls teased, "Little brother, don't tell me you already have a girlfriend. Can't you add some prestige?" Yi Xian was a little confused by this scene. Fortunately, he had an escape method. He took a step forward and disappeared in front of the three girls in a puff of green smoke. Ah! The three girls were shocked by Yi Xian. Fortunately, the existence of immortal cultivators in the human world was no longer a secret. The three girls experienced the initial panic and jumped up in joy. They did not expect to meet an immortal cultivator. On the other side, Yi Xian had already appeared on another street. This time, he did not dare to reveal his true appearance. Instead, he hid in the void and strolled along this bustling street. I didn't expect these little girls to be so bold. Yi Xian sighed with emotion. The human world was still the same as before. It really made him feel a sense of nostalgia. However, Yi Xian also realized one thing. Once he returned to his homeland, he was no longer able to integrate into this world. His entire being was incompatible with the human world. Perhaps this was the difference in the level of life. In just half a day, Yi Xian had walked through the entire human world. He was reminiscing about his hometown and revisiting the place where he was born and raised. He did not linger and did not miss his hometown. Everything was strange yet familiar. After half a day, Yi Xian had walked through the entire human world. His heart finally calmed down, because Yi Xian had returned to this place to search for the shocking impasse. This was his real purpose. White clouds floated in the blue sky. Yi Xian sat cross-legged in the clouds. The divine sense of the heaven-defying realm rippled out and covered the entire human world. He was feeling the existence of the shocking impasse. Yi Xian frowned slightly, because he did not feel any mysterious power, let alone the existence of the shocking impasse. Chapter 1837. Other than the aura of the mortal world, as well as the thin spiritual energies of the world, there was nothing left in the entire human world. It looks like he has hidden himself very well. Yi Xian retracted his heaven-defying perception. He knew that with his present cultivation level, there was no way for him to sense the existence of such a terrifying being. But thankfully, Yi Xian had long expected such an outcome. He naturally had a solution. Wang. At the next moment, time came to a halt as space froze. The entire human world came to a halt as a desolate aura emanated from Yi Xian's body, instantly filling the entire human world. Desolate Heaven Technique. This was the forbidden heavenly technique of desolation. As the strongest person in the primordial era, Yi Xian believed that once this technique was used, as long as there was a terrifying being hiding in the human world, he would definitely sense it and come out to meet him. You are back. Suddenly, a faint hoarse voice sounded. The voice appeared very abruptly, so much so that Yi Xian did not notice it at all. Rumble. At the next moment, the world spun as the scenery changed drastically. Yi Xian was teleported away. When he appeared again, he was deep in a mountain range. Heartbreak Mountain? When Yi Xian surveyed his surroundings, his expression immediately changed. This was because although the mountain range looked extremely ordinary, it was an extremely important place in his memories. This was because his life had changed in Heartbreak Mountain. It was also here that he met Yuan Ling, allowing him to truly embark on the path of cultivation. However, Yi Xian remembered that Heartbreak Mountain had long been reduced to ashes after his battle with Yuan Ling. He never expected that this mountain range would appear once again upon his return. Which terrifying being are you? Yi Xian was in Heartbreak Mountain. He didn't see any figures, but he knew that this heaven-shocking absolute being was here. Have you forgotten? You were the one who got me to guard this place and wait for your return. From the looks of it, your memories have yet to fully awaken. Wang. A ripple appeared in the void as a hunched elder walked out of the void. There was no peerless might, nor was there a world-shaking aura. This old man's hair was white, and even his back was bent. He gave off the feeling of a setting sun. However, Yi Xian was horrified, and his heart thumped violently. It was because this old man gave him an extremely dangerous feeling, and it was a feeling that only prison had ever given him. Obviously, this person was definitely one of the small group of people who could shock the heavens and the earth. Otherwise, Yi Xian would absolutely not feel that this person was extremely dangerous. What's your name? Yi Xian calmed himself down and looked at the hunchbacked old man with a deep gaze. Song. The hunchbacked old man replied indifferently. However, his turbid eyes were scrutinizing Yi Xian, causing Yi Xian's heart to feel numb. He didn't know what the old man was thinking. Song, Yi Xian murmured. He had only inherited a strand of desolation's memory. There was no information about Song in this strand of memory. Heaven-defying realm. Song scrutinized Yi Xian for a long time. He shook his head in disappointment and said, "Your cultivation is still too weak. I originally thought that when we met again, you would return to your peak, and I would be able to regain my freedom. It seems that I will be disappointed." Hearing Song's words, Yi Xian's eyes flashed with surprise. He had already guessed some things from Song's words. "Come with me." Song walked unsteadily like an old man. He waved at Yi Xian, and a ripple spread out in the void. He brought Yi Xian into the ripple in the void. This was an eternally lonely space. There was nothing in the surroundings. There was only an eternally lonely atmosphere. As soon as Yi Xian entered this place, his mood was instantly suppressed. A violent feeling grew in his heart. This startled Yi Xian, and he hurriedly suppressed this feeling. "Where is this?" Yi Xian looked around. His eyes flickered. Clearly, he hated this place. He didn't want to stay here. "Where is this?" Song smiled faintly. When his wrinkled old face smiled, it was strange and frightening. A pair of turbid eyes fell on Yi Xian. "This is a cage that you created for me. Yet you ask me where this is?" Song's voice was very soft, but an extremely oppressive atmosphere was growing, and it even faintly contained a grudge that made one's heart tremble. "A cage that I created for you?" Yi Xian's expression changed slightly. He naturally knew who Song was talking about. It must be his previous life. "That's right. This is the cage that you created for me. I have been trapped here for eons. Back then, you made a bet with me. If I won, you would tell me the truth behind the door. But if I lost, I would guard this place for you forever. Only when you truly return can I regain my freedom." Song was mumbling, but when Yi Xian heard it, it made Yi Xian's hair stand on end. Resentment. A great resentment that had never been seen before. Although Song spoke lightly, Yi Xian could feel the resentment deeply. In an eternally lonely space, even if he was one of the few people who could shock the heavens and the earth, being trapped in this space forever and surrounded by endless loneliness was the most terrifying feeling in the universe. Yi Xian finally understood why his mood became irritable as soon as he entered this place. He even felt an extremely oppressive atmosphere. This was obviously formed by Song's resentment. The great resentment of a person who could shock the heavens and the earth was so terrifying that even a heaven-defying realm like him was affected. "Do you know what I want to do now?" Song spoke softly. Only his turbid eyes were flickering. This eternally lonely space was trembling terrifyingly. That earth-shattering resentment was gradually being released. "You want to kill me." Yi Xian paused between each word. He didn't need to guess. If he had been trapped here for eons, he would have wanted nothing more than to tear the person who imprisoned him to pieces. He would have even eaten his flesh and drank his blood. Even that wouldn't be enough to quench the hatred in his heart. "Since you know I want to kill you, you still dare to come to me. You really aren't afraid of death." Rumble. In the next moment, the ancient resentment shook the heavens and the earth. Rays of primeval evil light crisscrossed on Song. His stooped body straightened, and his wrinkled old skin faded away. An extremely evil young man appeared. What did it mean to be eternally evil? What did it mean to shock the heavens and the earth? What did it mean to suppress the past and the present? At this moment, Song fully expressed the meaning of these three sentences. The primeval evil light wreaking havoc on his body was terrifying to the extreme, especially his eyes. Not only were they evil, but they were also filled with resentment and hatred. A single glance was enough to make one's mind explode and scalp tingle. What kind of gaze was that? Loneliness, despair, resentment, malevolence, brutality. There was no hope in his eyes. Chapter 1838. Yi Xian's scalp went numb, and his hair stood on end. He could clearly feel Song's resentment, And this resentment was so strong that it was beginning to affect Yi Xian's mind. Boom, boom, boom. This eternally lonely space trembled in a terrifying manner. Terrifying ripples rippled through the spatial walls as Tsang walked towards Yi Xian step by step. Yi Xian was retreating because he could clearly feel his opponent's venomous killing intent. This killing intent truly existed and wasn't intentionally released by his opponent. Instead, it was formed from the most terrifying resentment that was suppressed in the bottom of his heart. "You're afraid I'll kill you?" Boom. Suddenly, in the next moment, Song strangely appeared in front of Yi Xian. Their faces were only an inch apart, and their eyes met. That evil and awe-inspiring gaze caused Yi Xian's heart to palpitate in fear. Time seemed to stop at this moment, turning into eternal loneliness. A strange and frightening scene appeared in front of him. Song and Yi Xian looked at each other. This moment turned into eternity, as if time had frozen. Time stopped, space froze, and even Yi Xian couldn't feel the breathing of Song. This was because in the other party's sinister eyes, Yi Xian was dazed for an instant, as if he'd seen his eternal and lonely past. "You won't kill me." After an unknown period of time, Yi Xian was the first to break this eternal silence. When his voice rang out, time seemed to start moving again. "Why?" Song was still staring at Yi Xian. From beginning to end, his gaze never left Yi Xian. A sinister voice came from his mouth. "Because of the promise." At this moment, Yi Xian's mind suddenly calmed down, and the fear in his heart dissipated. His entire body was filled with a desolate aura, as if he had turned into that legendary person. "Promise," Song murmured. His gaze finally moved away from Yi Xian. He took 3 steps back, and an indescribable aura emanated from his body. At this moment, the endless resentment and hatred disappeared from Song's body. His body began to bend once more, and he once again became an old man in his twilight years. There was no longer any emotion coming from him. "That's right, it's a promise. It's the promise I made to you back then. However, that's only one of the things," Song said in a hoarse voice. His voice was filled with desolation and an indescribable emotion. "Do you still remember her?" "Wang." Suddenly, the void flickered and ripples spread out. An ancient bronze coffin appeared, filled with the mottled aura of time. It gently landed in front of Yi Xian. "Xiao, he's back." Rumble. Song personally opened the ancient coffin. A divine light rose from the coffin. It was so bright that Yi Xian couldn't open his eyes. However, his heart was palpitating with terror at this moment. He couldn't control himself. Time passed quickly. The ancient bronze coffin had existed since time immemorial, waiting for eternity. A person. A girl. To be exact, a girl was lying in the ancient bronze coffin. She was sleeping in the ancient bronze coffin. She had long black hair, snow-white skin, a face that looked like it was carved from ivory, and a simple smile. She was sleeping peacefully in the ancient bronze coffin, as if she had been sleeping for a very, very long time. "She is." Dong dong dong. When he saw the sleeping girl in the ancient bronze coffin, Yi Xian's heart pounded violently. An indescribable emotion grew in his heart, prompting him to reach out towards the girl. "Don't touch her." Boom. Suddenly, a low roar came out of Tsang's mouth, causing Yi Xian to wake up from his stupor. "Who is she?" Yi Xian looked at Tsang in a daze. His head was in intense pain, and even his soul was trembling. Scattered fragments of memories emerged from the depths of his mind. Pain. Extreme pain. Yi Xian felt like his head was about to explode. These fragments of memory were not the inherited memories of desolation, but hidden in the depths of his soul. He could forget everything, but there would always be one person who would forever be engraved in the depths of his heart. "Did you forget who she is?" "How could you forget who she is?" Boom. Archaic evil light and raging resentment. Song's form constantly changed, from an old man to an evil youth, and then from an evil youth to a stooped old man. This proved that his emotions were extremely unstable. All of a sudden, at this moment, Yi Xian seemed to understand something. Song's resentment did not only come from the eternal loneliness and imprisonment, but also from the girl in the ancient bronze coffin. "Her name is Xiao. She is the person I love the most." She is also the person who loves you the most. Song looked at the girl in the coffin, murmuring in his sleep. He slowly raised his head to look at Yi Xian, hatred and resentment growing in his eyes again. Xiao, Yi Xian murmured. His soul hurt more and more. It was as if this name had a terrifying magic that directly affected his soul. What is eternal loneliness? So what if I'm imprisoned forever? Compared to her, none of this is important. Song murmured. He once again looked at the girl in the coffin. The resentment in his eyes turned into gentleness and love. Xiao, he is back. But at this moment he cannot wake you up. I really want to kill him. But I know you will not allow me to hurt him. You will blame me. Song murmured. He alternated between laughing and crying. All of his emotions came from the girl in the coffin. So what if it is world-shaking? So what if it is eternal? This so-called promise is even more laughable. Song looked at Yi Xian again. His eyes were sometimes filled with resentment and hatred, sometimes with hope. I did indeed promise you that I would guard this place forever. However, this so-called promise is worthless in this eternally lonely place. So what if I break my own promise? Song was crazily mumbling in his sleep. You think I won't kill you because of that bullshit promise? Song laughed madly at himself. He was a world-shaking person. A person who had been evil since the beginning of time. He did not care about this so-called promise. I only promised her that I will guard this place forever, and wait for you to come back, and wake her up again. That is all. For one person, he would sacrifice the world. For one person, he would accompany loneliness forever. This was the path Song had chosen. Even though he had eternal resentment and hatred in his heart, it could not compare to her simple smile. He only wanted to fulfill his promise to the girl in the coffin. At this moment, Yi Xian stared blankly at the girl in the coffin. He could not remember who this girl was. But the piercing pain in his soul told him that this was a person who made him feel extremely guilty. This feeling was very real. It was so real that Yi Xian believed his own feelings. Although he did not have any memories of this girl, the guilt grew stronger and stronger. Do you want to hear a story? Chapter 1839. While Yi Xian was still in a daze, Song's voice sounded again. Only this time, his voice was very calm, and it also woke Yi Xian up from his daze. You speak, I'm listening, Yi Xian said in a low voice. The primordial era was cut off, and the primordial era was born. In the distant primordial era, the three most outstanding people of all time were born. Song sank into his memories, and he muttered about the distant and unknown past. Yi Xian listened carefully. In the distant past, the primordial era no longer existed. The legendary person entered that door, and the primordial era was born. That was the most dazzling era. And it was also an era where thousands of Daos fought for supremacy. In that dazzling era, countless primordial era creatures defied the heavens, and together, they wrote a picture of the peak of the primordial era. Among them, 3 people were the most dazzling, and they were also the most outstanding people of the primordial era. These 3 people were 2 men and 1 woman, and they were known as the 3 most outstanding people of the primordial era. The number 1 person of the primordial era, whose clothes were whiter than snow, was also known as the number 1 godly king of the primordial era. This person's name was Tai Chu. The other person was known as Tai Tsong, and he was known as the most evil person of the primordial era. His Tai Xia heaven technique was unrivaled, and he was revered by the primordial era creatures. The last person was a woman, and she was known as Yao by the primordial era creatures. Although she was a woman, her cultivation was not weaker than the previous 2. But this was not the most important thing. Yao did not have a stunning appearance, but her smile was the purest and most sincere of the primordial era. She never made things difficult for others, and she was as pure as the water of the 9 heavens. No one could bear to deceive her. She wasn't kind, but she wasn't evil either. She merely had the purest heart of a child. Practically all the primeval beings that had met her had received kindness from her in the past. Even the evilest and most evil person would suppress the evil in their heart before Yao, fearing that they would blaspheme that innocent smile and hurt this girl. In the distant primordial era, Yao was the pure land in the hearts of all primordial era creatures. And she was also a person that no one could profane. She was the purest person of the primordial era. No, it wasn't just the primordial era. It should be said that since the beginning of the universe, she was the pure land in the hearts of all living things. The greatest beauty in the world was on this Yao. Even the extremely evil Tsang had fallen before the girl, all for the sake of getting a smile from the girl and staying by her side forever. In that distant era, in that most resplendent primordial age, Tsang accompanied Yao and spent the happiest time together. One day, Yao casually asked, "Who will become the strongest person in the supreme ancient immortal realms?" Just a casual sentence from the girl caused Tsang to travel through the entire primeval era, fighting throughout the primeval era, suppressing an entire era. He wanted to prove to the girl that he was the #1 expert of the primeval era. Because of the girl's casual words, he traveled through the entire primordial era to challenge the #1 godly king of the primordial era, absolute beginning. That battle was so intense that it could be said to be the most world-shaking battle since ancient times. This battle lasted for 100,000 years, but there was still no conclusion. It wasn't until the girl heard the news and rushed over that the battle was stopped. Tsang smiled foolishly at the girl, proving that he would become the #1 expert of the primeval era for her. But the girl never thought of letting Tsang become the #1 expert of the primeval era. She also didn't want Tsang to suffer any harm. She stopped the battle, and it was during this earth-shattering battle that Taichu met the two of them. The three of them traveled through the primeval era and became best friends. That was also the happiest time of Tsang's life, because as long as he had Yao by his side, every day would be the happiest. Nothing could compare to a smile from the girl. But finally one day, a person appeared and broke this happiest time. That day, the primeval era shook and the world collapsed. A large door opened with a rumble, and a person walked out from it. All of the archaic creatures looked at him in shock. This was the first time. This was also the first time something like this had happened before. Tsang saw a gaze in the girl's eyes that he had never seen before. It was a gaze of worship. This gaze had never appeared on the girl before. Even when he and Absolute Beginning were together, she had never looked at them with such a gaze of worship. At that moment, Tsang realized that perhaps the girl had never loved him or Absolute Beginning. She had only treated him as a brother to the two of them. That day, the primeval era shook and the world changed. The man who walked out of the door shocked the world. He was the legendary man, the only person who had survived the primeval era. It was also that day that the girl said goodbye to Tsang and Absolute Beginning. She chased after that man and left. It was also that day that Absolute Beginning left. It was also that day that Tsang's heart cracked. That evil light exploded. Without the girl's company, he once again turned into the primeval era's most evil person. It was also that day that Tsang told himself that he had to defeat that legendary man. He had to prove to the girl that he was the strongest in the primeval era. Cultivate. Crazily cultivate. He even cultivated without any regard for his own safety. Finally, the heavens did not disappoint those who persevered. He deduced the great evil firmament heaven technique into the most terrifying forbidden heavenly technique. It even surpassed the desolate heaven technique among the forbidden heavenly techniques. When he turned into an existence that shocked the world, when he reached perfection in the great evil firmament heaven technique, he finally embarked on the path to challenge that man. That battle was even more shocking than the primeval era. It nearly shattered a fifth of the primeval era. With the great evil firmament heaven technique and his shocking cultivation level, it made Tsang terrifying to the point of being invincible in the primeval era. This battle had been going on for 1,000,000 years, but the final result had left him in a daze. He had been defeated. He had still been defeated by that man. Even though he had deduced the great evil firmament heaven technique to its limits, turning it into the most terrifying forbidden heavenly technique, and his cultivation level had reached a shocking level, he had still been defeated by that man. There was no doubt about his defeat. There was no excuse for his defeat. In front of that man, he had become a complete loser. When he faced death, the girl he once loved had appeared and stood in front of him, blocking that fatal strike for him. That strike had shattered the girl's soul, leaving her with no chance of survival. That day, Song cried. He hugged the girl and cried in grief. Only at that moment did he realize that the girl had never given up on him. She had only treated him as a family member. In order to save his life, she had blocked that fatal strike for him. It was also that day, on her deathbed, the girl had told him not to blame that man. He was shouldering the heaviest mission of all time. It was also that day that the two men had cast a heaven-defying fate-changing technique that surpassed the forbidden heavenly technique for the girl. They had left her with a chance of survival, allowing her to be buried in the ancient bronze coffin for all eternity. That legendary man had left. But before he left, he had made Song promise that he would guard the place of origin for all eternity. When he returned, he would awaken the girl once more. For this promise, Song had accompanied him in loneliness for all eternity, just to wait for that man's return. This wait had lasted for eternity and eternity, but he had never regretted it. Even if he had to endure eternal loneliness and death, he still kept his promise. Not because of the promise he made to that man, but because he had made a vow to protect the girl for the rest of his life. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.